So this video is entirely a passion project because I've been playing Geometry Dash for about 7 years, I think. It's been since 2014. And I know a lot about the game. But I need to say right off the bat, huge credit to Electrify from what I know, is the first Iceberg video in the GD community. I could be wrong. There might be other Iceberg videos. If there are, I apologize, and I'll credit you in the description. But to my knowledge, this is the, first Iceberg video I've at least seen. And, well, Electrify's Iceberg video is pretty good. It only has 5 tiers, and when I watched it, towards the bottom, I felt that I recognized a lot, if not all, of the topics. So I thought it'd be fun to make my own Iceberg and sort of review that. So my Iceberg is 10 tiers, and it gets pretty deep into the game. I want to say, though, this is not, despite being a Geometry Dash Iceberg, this is not for the faint of heart. Some topics towards the end, especially, are extremely triggering and are, serious topics that I will not be joking about and that I will be taking very serious. The other thing is, Electrify's Iceberg seems to focus more on events that happened in the game and in the community. Like, one of the, I want to say it was on the final tier. Anaban was on, the final tier. Whereas Anaban's more towards the middle. I'm going to be focusing on more, theoretical concepts about the game and possibilities within the game and, game design stuff. I'm not going to be focusing on, you'll understand. But this Iceberg is, as I said, 10 tiers, and we have a lot to dig into, so let's dig in, shall we? I will say, before this video begins, I have actually decided to go ahead and make a Patreon. Now, as you guys know, on my other YouTube channel, which has basically become my top priority channel at this point, I make high-effort review content, just reviewing different kinds of media, and I kind of wanted to give people the ability to donate if they want to. Obviously, they don't have to. But yeah, I made a Patreon, so if you're interested in throwing a buck my way, it'll be in the description for you to look into. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get into Tier 1. First up, we have Geometry Jump. This is a very simple point. It's just referring to the fact that Geometry Dash, before the game came out, was originally going to be titled Geometry Jump, but as we all know now, the game's name eventually got changed to Geometry Dash. What's very interesting about this, though, is, and not a lot of people know this, if you go into the game's files, and you would probably know this if you're the type to mess with texture packs, but any texture file is labeled GJ Jump, and not GJ Dash, or it's something like GJ Game Sheet or something like that. The GJ obviously meaning Geometry Jump. From what RobTop has said on places like Discord, he cannot change the game files to say Geometry Dash, as the title Geometry Jump is so hard-coded into the game that changing it breaks things. So yeah, I guess despite the game being called Geometry Dash, we are stuck with references to Geometry Jump. As for why RobTop never just kept the name Geometry Jump, because, apparently, and I don't know how true this is, but from what I read somewhere, and I don't remember where because I read this years ago, but from what I heard, for some reason the App Store on iOS wouldn't accept the game, which confuses me. But yeah, that's that. The game was originally going to be called Geometry Jump. Next up, we have Demons. This is probably one of the more broad types, but obviously we're on Tier 1, so a lot of them are going to be like this. Demons, pretty self-explanatory, hardest difficulty in the game. But interestingly enough, if I can make this point more interesting, is why the demon difficulty exists in the first place, instead of it just being all, like, insanes and stuff. So, apparently a creator released a level, I think it was Demon Park, don't quote me on that, but I think it was Demon Park, which is, like, the official first ever demon difficulty level. RobTop was so impressed by how difficult the level was that he created an entire rating just for levels like that. Which is funny because, like, nowadays the level isn't considered that hard, but when it came out, man, this thing was ridiculously difficult. Next up we have Riot. Riot is a legacy player, and what I mean by that is he used to be one of the best at the game, but he's been easily dethroned at being one of the best now. But despite not being the best at the game anymore, he's still kind of held at that regard and respected, rightfully so, because Riot is a extremely impressive player. He beat some of the hardest demons at the time of when he was a player, and he was really, really fucking talented. Next up we have Rubrub. I know this is pretty shameful for a point at the very top of the iceberg, but I actually don't know that much about this topic. What I can say is that Rubrub is kind of a meme in the Geometry Dash community, where the developer, RobTop Games, or RobTop, gets jokingly called Rubrub. RobTop himself is in on the meme. For instance, in the level Knock'em, he has the text Rubrub constantly flashing on some of the blocks. But yeah, it's just a nickname. I have no idea why it's a meme, where the meme came from, or why he's called Rubrub. He's just called Rubrub. Next up we have 1.9. 1.9 is what is essentially considered to be the golden age of Geometry Dash, like the best update in the game. To put it into perspective, we have an entire private server dedicated to being stuck in update 1.9, and we definitely don't have that for any other update. You don't see any 2.0 private servers, or if you do, they are not popular. The reason 1.9 was so popular is because this update introduced a lot of interesting creator mechanics that allowed people to make some really creative levels. It was the level that introduced the wave game mode. Lots of really popular levels like 9 Circles came out at the time, which were, like, revolutionary. And yeah, 1.9 is just held as one of the best updates in the game. Next up we have daily levels. This is another one of the really simple ones. Daily levels were a feature introduced in update 2.1, where a random featured level gets set as the daily once a day, every single day, and you get special rewards for beating the daily. Interestingly enough, however, if you beat a level that's assigned as the daily, it doesn't mark it as beaten on the server, so theoretically you could beat a level twice and get twice the stats for the same level. Next up we have level IDs. Level IDs are essentially numbers that get attached to levels upon server upload. They are very, very useful because they not only tell you what number level on the server it is, in the sense of, like, you can go from ID 1 to ID 6543, and if you go to that ID, you know you are playing the 6543rd level to ever be uploaded in the game. Lots of really cool things can be done with level IDs. For instance, you can actually determine what update a level was released in purely just based off of that number. And on top of that, and this is even more interesting, if a level has been unlisted from the server, level IDs can sometimes be the only way to search for a level. So yeah, that's level IDs. Next up we have weekly demons. Weekly demons are pretty much the exact same concept as daily levels, except the difficulty of weekly demons is always easy demon or harder. On top of that, instead of getting a level once a day, you get a level once a week. So that is the concept of weekly demons. Next up we have banned songs. So banned songs is a pretty broad point, but it's just referring to the fact that there are songs in Geometry Dash that are banned, that you just cannot use. There are many examples of this, but I think the most notable example is Theory of Skrillex and its song Skrillex GD Remix 2, I believe. Basically, it's just First of the Year by Skrillex, but with all of the vocal parts of the pre-drop removed. So it just goes from all of the pre-vocals and then cuts straight to the drop. There are many band songs in the game like this, and there's a point later in the iceberg that elaborates on why, but for now, yeah, just know that there are songs in the game that you cannot use despite levels having them. There are, however, tools and mods you can use to mod the songs back in. All you have to do is download an MP3 of the song, and then once you have the MP3, you name the MP3 the exact level ID, drop it in your resources folder, and then attempt to download it. Despite the game saying the download failed, the download button will disappear and the song will now work. Next up we have Here Be Dragon. When 2.0 was, like, about to come out but wasn't out yet, Update 1.9 had an Easter egg where if you went to the Coming Soon page and clicked the Information button, it said, "You're after my hidden treasure, aren't you? Ha, you will never find it. Just don't scroll too far. Here be dragons." This ended up, oddly enough, hinting towards a coin, in which you would just scroll past all the main levels in the menu over and over and over, and eventually a coin would show up on the Coming Soon tab that you could click and collect. I can't get footage of this because I already have the coin, and once you have it, you can't do it again. But, interestingly enough, the Here Be Dragons part seems to have been hinting towards Update 2.0, as 2.0 had the dragons all over the advertising, and more importantly, the dragons themselves turned out to be these fucking things. This is what the dragons ended up being. I guess the final thing I can say about all of this is, oddly enough, after Update 2.1 came out, the dialogue changed yet again, and all it says this time is, and I quote, "The darkness lingers. Be careful who you trust." Okay, so next up is Android spin-offs. So Geometry Dash has a number of spin-offs that are only available on Android and cannot be played on PC without an emulator. These spin-offs include Geometry Dash Meltdown, Geometry Dash World, and Geometry Dash Sub-Zero. These updates exist purely to advertise whatever the update that came after them was. For instance, Meltdown came out when 1.9 was the newest update, and existed purely just to advertise the moving objects that would be added in 2.0. World similarly advertised 2.1, and Sub-Zero advertised 2.2. The interesting thing, however, is that these spin-offs have levels that, at the moment, cannot be played in the main game. The levels are as follows. Meltdown has the Seven Seas, Viking Arena, and Airborne Robots. Geometry Dash World has Payload, Beast Mode, Machina, Years, Frontlines, Space Pirates, Striker, Embers, Round 1, and Monster Dance-Off. And then finally, Sub-Zero has Press Start, Knock 'em, and Power Trip. All of these levels can only be played on mobile on spin-off games as of right now. And yeah, that's just where it comes down to. It's really interesting that there are just 3 games in Geometry Dash, or 3 sets of levels, sorry, that can only be accessed on mobile. You can't access them in the main game. It's pretty interesting. Next up we have level requests. Level requests are a type of live stream that happens on Twitch, in which essentially the viewers can take a level's ID, paste them in the chat, and then the level gets put into a queue by a bot. The streamer can then, either in order or randomly, pick an ID from this queue and play it on stream. So what's essentially happening is the viewers are requesting the streamer to play levels. These streams are really popular on Twitch and get a lot of views. Like, if you want guaranteed, like, at least 5 viewers or 10 viewers, you can just do level request streams and you'll get viewers. Alright, there we go. That's Tier 1 done. Let's move on to Tier 2. Next up we have Extreme Demons. So Extreme Demons are a specific type of demon difficulty, and if you don't know, there are multiple demon difficulties. There's Easy Demon, Medium Demon, Hard Demon, Insane Demon, and Extreme Demon. Extreme Demon is like the final frontier of difficulty, where it doesn't get any harder, you know. Extreme Demons are just batshit insane difficult levels. However, when I say it's the final frontier of difficulty, that's not entirely true, because there's also impossible levels. So impossible levels is an interesting point just due to the amount of detail you could go into with this, and I'm going to get into some of it. So originally impossible levels were just levels that were ridiculously hard and no human could complete them, as you'd expect. You know, exactly what you'd expect from an impossible level. These could still be completed if you had a bot go through, or if you slowed down the level with speed hacks, because what made these levels impossible wasn't like sock up in wall. You could actually get through the level. What made it impossible was you'd have to click at inhumane speeds. Like, I've seen people put clicks in with an input bot, and it literally sounds like this. Needless to say, no human is gonna do that. It's just not gonna happen. So, yeah, that is that. But what's really funny about this is all of these old, really spammy impossible levels aren't considered good anymore. They've been dubbed silent levels, which is kind of a moniker for an impossible level with way too much spam and, like, way too much straight fly. Oh god, the straight fly. So now there's been a list created for the hardest impossible levels, going off of how difficult it is to bot them, and, yeah, these actually have interesting gameplay, because despite being impossible, they have rules in place, like, the level cannot be physically impossible, meaning you have to be able to go through with a bot and or a speed hack, or both. You have to, you know, it has to have every single part of the level be under 15 clicks per second, so no more of that shit. And yeah, it's just overall way more high quality impossible levels. Next up we have Swingcopter. Swingcopter, if you don't know, was a glitch that existed pretty much since 1.9. It's a pretty old glitch, where if you had a dual ball, and the top ball was in a 1 block wide corridor with a bunch of blue jump rings, you could have a ball that could flip gravity in the air. And it was a really interesting game mode, so a lot of really interesting levels used it. I don't know exactly a good list of levels that uses it, but it's pretty popular. But the thing about Swingcopter is it's really hard to put in a level without breaking the level or making it buggy or whatever, because you have to have a dual ball fall into place just right in a way that ensures that you won't be able to get out of it. And it's just difficult to build well into existing gameplay. So, Update 2.2, which as of recording is not out yet. I kind of hope to release this video before 2.2 comes out. But as of recording, 2.2 isn't out yet, and yeah, from what we know, they're adding the Swingcopter in as an actual game mode in 2.2. Now, what's interesting about this is, and I don't know for sure, this isn't something I can, like, prove, but I heard somewhere that they're not calling it the Swingcopter, and they're just calling it the Swing. So glow is a very hard one to explain, but glow is a series of decoration objects that exists within the editor. They are exactly what they say. They're glow. They make objects glow. Glow is a very useful tool. It almost always makes things look better. The problem is, I want to say it was around early 2.1, a lot of really low-effort levels started to come out that just abused the fuck out of glow and did nothing else, and honestly didn't look that good. Like, the only decoration in the level was glow. There were even some levels that got rated where the objects would be hollowed out and the inside would just have glow, no other decoration. It was a big problem, actually, because, like, really high-effort, extremely good levels were coming out, and they weren't getting rated, and glow levels were just blowing the fuck up. And this made a lot of people mad, and it got to the point where eventually, due to, you know, community outcry, glow levels stopped getting rated as often. The downside of this is the rate standards went up, and that's not a good thing, because it's really, really difficult to get your level rated. Next up, we have the map packs. The map packs were essentially the gauntlets before the gauntlets existed. 1.9 is equivalent to gauntlets. And, they're not good. So like, if you go to play the map packs, you open up the first pack, and it's really fucking good. It has the levels Sonar, Retray, and I think it's Dark Paradise, which are really fucking good levels. The first map pack is actually really good. But the moment you beat the first map pack, it pretty much goes downhill with, like, just some really, really awful levels being put into the map packs. Like, levels that shouldn't be rated were not only rated and put in the map packs. It's really bad. There's also a lot of levels that are just broken and don't work and have bugs and just don't work right. A good example of this is there's a level in the map packs where you're supposed to hit a jump ring and land on a platform, but it doesn't work unless you jump on the jump ring in a very specific way. And it's not a refresh rate bug, it just happens. It's like the game's physics changed at one point or something. But, yeah, no, the map packs are just the gauntlets, but awful. And that's what they are. The thing is, though, also just like the gauntlets, there are demon levels in these. The thing is, there are a lot of demon levels in these gauntlets, and they're not all bad. Some of them are good, but a lot of them are not good. But the big sad part about map packs is that you have to beat them. At some point, it doesn't matter when, but at some point you have to beat them, and the main reason is because the map packs give you developer coins, or, you know, gold coins. Now, what this essentially means is that RobTop can never remove the map packs from the game, because if RobTop did, old players would have more old players would have more gold coins than achievable, and new players wouldn't be able to get these gold coins. It would essentially break the game. So yeah, no, map packs are bad in every way, shape, or form, but aside from being awful, they're basically the predecessor to the gauntlets. Next up, we have 128. 128 is referring to the first rated level on the server that is still in existence, and that is, ironically named, First Level. First Level has the ID of 128, and there are no levels with an ID earlier than this. This is the oldest level you can possibly play. It's exactly what you would expect. It's an okay level. It's nothing bad, nothing good. It's just okay. Go look it up. Just type 128 in the search bar, and you'll get a level called First Level. Next up, we have private servers. Private servers is referring to the various private servers that exist for Geometry Dash. These usually come as a separate executable, or in mobile's case, a separate APK. I don't know how iOS works. But effectively, they are just different versions of the game that connect to a different server, usually run by an independent creator. Significant examples include XGDPS, which is run by X-Creator Goal, the 1.9 private server, which is run by Absolute. This is an example of a gimmick private server, by the way. The 1.9 private server's entire gimmick is that you can't use any features that are newer than update 1.9. So if you ever wanted to try editing and making a level with the limitations of 1.9, you can. On the other end of the spectrum, there is a 2.2 private server, which is just Geometry Dash with an unfinished version of 2.2, which is cool because this is how people build all of those, like, platformer levels and stuff, despite the update not being out. Next up, we have the Demons List. The Demons List is a website created on Pointer Crate essentially dedicated to tiering the game's extreme demons from the top 200 hardest, I believe. The interesting thing is that the list is split into different tiers, the tiers being the main list, the extended list, and the legacy list. Main list is the top 75. The extended list is all the way down to 150, and the legacy list goes to 200. So, what is interesting about this is that despite just existing for the purpose of being a list and nothing more, the Demons list actually does have a system where you can submit scores and records and actually, like, get some attention and notoriety for beating these extremes. This has created a little bit of toxicity in the community where people kind of devalue players who haven't beaten extremes. But for the most part, that's not the case. Most people who beat extremes are really, really chill. So, yeah, it's just basically a website where you can get notoriety for beating levels that are genuinely difficult. Drama seems like a very vague point to have on the iceberg, but it is purely just referring to the fact that there is drama in the Geometry community. While this may be a dumb thing to bring up to most people, people who actually, like, are new to the game kind of get surprised by this. Like, not a lot of people know that there's drama in the community. And while there are specific examples that are notable, they are actually lower down on the iceberg, so I'm not going to bring them up specifically. But overall, just right now, keep in the back of your mind that there is drama in this community, and that it can actually get pretty bad. Okay, so bugs is another vague point, but it's mainly just referring to the fact that Geometry Dash is a very buggy game. Like, it's got a lot of bugs. Specific examples of bugs are going to be lower down on the iceberg. So, yeah, this is more just a setup similar to Drama, just the simple fact that the game has bugs. That's all this point is. Next up, we have the GDDP. So, the GDDP is effectively a Google spreadsheet made by some notable people in the Geometry Dash community. It is essentially, think an iceberg chart, but instead of it getting more obscure as you go down, it gets more difficult. So, like, the top of the list will contain levels like Death Moon, X, I don't know, like Wowzer's Holly is the final level of the thing, but, like, it'll contain a bunch of easier levels, but then you get to, like, the Amber Pack, which is way towards the bottom, and it's got, like, Plasma Pulse 2, Gamma Ray, Layak, High, Rampage, Flat Major. Like, basically, it is an iceberg of difficulty. The purpose of its creation was to aid in getting better at the game. The idea being, if you were to play every single level in the spreadsheet in order, it would aid you and allow you to get better at the game slowly and progressively. It's sort of like an achievement book, you know. What's really fun about it is it's also got a plethora of bonus packs towards the bottom. These bonus packs are just mini achievements like completing the Hell Trilogy, which is Cataclysm, Bloodbath, and Aftermath all in one pack. And while it wasn't there originally, the list eventually got updated to add a Michigan pack, which was essentially added to memorialize Michigan, who is a unfortunately passed away member of the Geometry Dash community. The Temple series contains the levels Water Temple, Fire Temple, Shadow Temple, Lava Temple, Forest Temple, and Desert Temple, all dedicated to memorialize Michigan. So this, along with all the other bonus packs, along with just the, like, ability to help you get better at the game in general, the GDDP is one of the most useful fan-created tools for the game. Next up, we have Megahack. Megahack is a compilation of mods that you can use for Geometry Dash, made by Absolute, the creators of the 1.9 private server, and it contains some of the most used mods by the community in the game. Stuff like FPS bypass, no clip, etc., etc. Just big, really important mods, like Speed Hack. And it's really notable, especially Megahack V6, which added the ability to pull up the window in-game via a DLL file, so it kind of runs more like the old Call of Duty mod menus from back on the Xbox 360. Some of these mods have actually inspired RobTop to add in features to the game, stuff like FPS bypass is being added in 2.2. Funnily enough, though, Megahack V6 is also not very, but just a little bit controversial, because Megahack V6 was the first version you had to pay for, and a lot of people don't agree with that, because the mods have always been free, and then suddenly you have to pay for them. Like, it's kind of just bullshit in a lot of people's eyes. Personally, I don't see it that way. I mean, if Absolute put in all the effort to make the mods, sure, whatever, it's their choice. But it's really controversial for a lot of people that you have to pay for it, and a lot of people might not be able to, especially considering a lot of the stuff in this mod pack can genuinely give some players an advantage. Like, you know, not everyone can pay for a 300 FPS monitor, so it definitely gives some people an advantage. But, yeah, it's just a somewhat controversial but extremely useful mod pack that you can use in Geometry Dash. So next up we have Bloodbath. Bloodbath is probably one of the most important Geometry Dash levels to ever be created. Inspired by Cataclysm, verified by Riot, Bloodbath was the first huge top one in the community. It contains a lot of really difficult gameplay you see in extremes today, like aggressive straight fly, triple spikes, and maybe some less annoying gameplay, like really interesting UFO gameplay, along with some really difficult wave gameplay. The level's just overall intimidating, and despite being nowhere near top 1 today, it is still, like, that one level that if you beat it, you are, like, really proud of yourself, and you are genuinely a skilled player, you know? It had a lot of community impact, which I don't really know much about, to be honest, because this is before I really followed the YouTube side of the community. So, yeah, it just old, top 1, really important to the community. GG is something I actually, now that I'm recording my lines for this, realize I know, like, nothing about. Okay, so GG is something that people yell as sort of a congratulations thing when people beat levels. It's just another way to say good job or good game or whatever. I don't entirely know why people say it or where it came from. I know nothing about this, I apologize. All I know is that GG effectively just means good game. So next up we have Sonic Wave. Sonic Wave was a top 1 that was being verified around the same time as Bloodbath, but what's interesting is that people at the time, and even now as it's a big misconception, think that Bloodbath and Sonic Wave are, like, very similar, if not the same, in difficulty, when realistically, Sonic Wave is number 54 on the Demons list, whereas Bloodbath isn't even on the list anymore. It's been pushed off completely. So it's just an interesting situation where two top 1s that were supposed to be the same difficulty ended up being completely different in regards to difficulty. So next up is pixel art. Pixel art is just something you can do in the game. I don't know how to do it, and it is really difficult to do from what I understand, but you can make entire drawings and stuff out of pixel blocks. These can look really good, to the extent where, like, some of these pixel art things that I've seen people do literally just look like drawings you'd see on paper. And yeah, it's really cool. Next up we have Dash Orb Hate. Now, this isn't, like, there isn't really an example I can give of this or anything. All I know is that after Update 2.1 was released, a feature got added called Dash Orbs. These are orbs where instead of touching them, you hold down, and when you hold down, you sort of go forward, or if the orb is pointing in a different direction, you go straight, basically. You hit it, and you go straight. The thing is I and a lot of other people think this is a really fucking good feature, and that it's really fun, they're really interesting to play around with. Although, there's also, even since the teaser dropped before the update even came out, there's always been a vocal group of people that hate dash orbs, and I don't get why, but it's such a bizarre amount that, like, I've seen comments on RobTop's videos where it literally just says, oh, okay, that's cool, can you remove dash orbs now? And it's just really weird. Like, there's just an irrational hatred towards dash orbs that I really don't understand, but it's there. And now we have finished with Tier 2. So let us get on with Tier 3. Next up we have request equals banned, which is referring to a weird stream titling trend that came up in the Geometry Dash community over on Twitch. And the reason it exists is because level request streams, as I mentioned higher up in the iceberg, are the most popular type of Geometry Dash live stream. It's a guaranteed way of getting viewers, basically. So, if you do not stream level request streams, what can happen is people will drop an ID in the chat asking you to play a level, even if you're not taking level requests. Some of these people can act like assholes and shit-talk you for not playing their level, despite the fact that, again, you never agreed to doing level requests in the first place. It's basically just a mess. People being really entitled, and to combat this, people started putting request equals ban in their stream title so that if someone drops an ID in chat, they can just ban them on the spot and not have to deal with it. Because at that point, if you don't read the stream title, it's kind of your fault. So, like, yeah, basically, sort of anti-asshole measure is the only way I could really think to explain this. People name their streams request equals ban so that people don't request streams in non-level request streams. That's basically what this is. There's a lot of them, though. Like, if it's not a level request stream, it probably has request equals ban in the title. Next up we have Glubfub, which is a really long point, but this is effectively one of probably the second most complicated vault code in the whole game, and definitely one of the most confusing and least obvious. So, first and foremost, to get this coin, you need to already have the achievement Sparky, which, if you don't know how to get this achievement, you go to the first Vault Keeper and just type in Sparky and you get his coin, he calls you a thief. Then, once you've already got this achievement, you gain the ability to get the Glubfub achievement. Alright, so stick with me here, as this is where it gets kind of complicated. Basically, what you have to do is go to the 2.1 Vault Keeper after doing the Sparky achievement, and you have to click on his face over and over until he speaks a specific set of dialogue. The dialogue is, and I quote, "I heard what you did, you little thief. You took Spooky's coin. That is pure evil. I like it. I know what you're thinking, but you will never get my coin. I keep it safe. Too clever for you." So, once he has said this, it will then allow you to trigger the dialogue in the 2.0 vault. So you go back to the 2.0 vault right away, and then mash on his head. He'll eventually say the dialogue, "So you met the gatekeeper. I heard he made fun of me. Made fun of Sparky." Like he has a better name. What does Glubfub mean anyway? I mean, oh no, I didn't tell you anything! So once he says this, you go back to the 2.1 vault, type in Glubfub, and you get a coin, and he calls you a thief. Interestingly enough, though, you have to do it this way. Normally, the dialogue would just be a hint, and if you know the code already, you can type it in without the dialogue. But oddly enough, with Glubfub, if you try to type it in the 2.1 vault, like, right off the bat, it just won't work. You have to read this dialogue. Even more annoyingly, only really YouTube video guides explain this well. Every single, like, all vault codes list on, like, forums and stuff always just says the code is Glubfub and never explains how you have to do it, which makes this code one of the most confusing in the game. So censorship is a very simple point. It's just referring to the fact that Geometry Dash does have active censorship within the game. From, if you try to type a cuss word into a level title, it'll get turned into a hyphen, all the way to in comment sections, if you try to type in the word fuck, it won't let you post the comment. It'll say, like, this comment cannot be posted at this time, or something like that. More oddly, there is a blacklist system where if a level gets uploaded and it's really fucked up, the level will be blacklisted and you can't play it unless you actually go to the creator's level page and just scroll through until you find the level. It's really bizarre, but yeah, there's an active censorship system in Geometry Dash. Alright, next up on the iceberg we have Save As. Save As is a Geometry Dash level that gained a lot of popularity, and it is the first level, to my knowledge, that exists purely to spread a message in regards to, like, mental health and mental illness and all that stuff. Effectively, how the level works is you start off and the level's pretty fun. It's, you know, a lot of flying gameplay and stuff. It's really colorful. It looks really nice. But as you get farther and farther in the level, it starts to lose color. It starts to break down. Blocks start appearing and disappearing. You know, sections will repeat over and over and over again. And the reason for this is the level is supposed to be a visual and playable representation of what it's like to have your mind essentially disintegrate from dementia and Alzheimer's. It's basically the everywhere at the end of time of Geometry Dash levels, if I could put it that way. It's really chilling, and playing the level really makes you feel bad for people with Alzheimer's and dementia and, you know, all that stuff. Overall, though, it's a pretty interesting work of art, and it really gets you thinking. So next up, we have GD is broken on mobile. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but there is more detail to it. So effectively, it applies to both Android and iOS, but it seems to be worse on iOS. Every single time Android and iOS get a big OS update, Geometry Dash seems to function worse and worse. Starting off on iOS 14, people noticed that the wave trail would, like, break really badly in a way that's really hard to explain. The shape would be all fucked up, and eventually, if you played long enough, it would just disappear. Eventually, when Android 10 came out, the same thing started happening to that. And then iOS 15, I believe it was, comes out, and the game just flat out stops working on iOS. If you try to run Geometry Dash on iPhone, the game just fucking cries. Like, it crashes, it just doesn't work, it's fucking dead. So, yeah, no, Geometry Dash completely broken on mobile. The developer, Rubrub, said that he would fix it for Update 2.2, which, I mean, that's good, because a huge chunk of the player base is on mobile. I mean, like, I primarily play on Steam, but even I run the game on my phone every once in a while. So, yeah, hopefully this gets fixed soon, but as of right now, the game is fucking broken on mobile. Next up, we have Boomlings. Boomlings is a game that Rubrub made before Geometry Dash that has since been taken off the Google Play Store, and Rubrub has kind of abandoned it. It's basically, you know those, like, Match 3 type games, like Columns, Candy Crush, Bejeweled? It's essentially one of those, and it's really fascinating for the specific reason of Boomlings is still acknowledged by Rubrub and by the community, despite its failure. For instance, the official Geometry Dash website, the one you use to, like, change your account's username and password and stuff like that, the name of the website is boomlings.com. And then just various stuff like that. In 2.2, they're adding Boomlings icons, so there's that. But yeah, it's basically a game Rubrub made before Geometry Dash. So next up we have 696969, which is referring to a level with the ID, hilariously, of 696969. The level, it's debated how you pronounce it. A lot of people don't want it to be this, but I'm assuming it is, so it's M-fuckers. But, I mean, it could also just be a guy pounding on his keyboard, who fucking knows. But regardless, this level is kind of hilarious because, yeah, it has the ID 696969. It's not anything remarkable, it's just a random, low-effort level, you know. But yeah, the ID has, so, like, just the ID alone has pushed this level into huge popularity with, like, over 100,000 downloads, over 6,000 likes. Like, this level is fucking popular, and it is quite literally just because of the ID. Okay, so this one's exciting. This is the first big concept on the iceberg, and there will be much bigger and more complicated concepts as we go down. This is the idea that the nightmare is not a demon. And the reason behind this is the nightmare being one of the easiest easy demons. Comparing it to levels that are rated like 9-star are extremely, like unmeasurably more difficult than the nightmare. Like, they are way harder than the nightmare to the point where it's kind of a joke. I mean, the infamous High Life, which is a 9-star that inspired an extreme called Low Death, High Life is harder than the nightmare. There are so many levels that you could say are harder than the nightmare, because the nightmare really is just a slightly more difficult version of Polargeist with a weird flying section. So, it is bizarre that this level is considered a demon at all, and yeah, another example, like, it doesn't just stop at the nightmare is just the example for the point on the iceberg. This would also apply to levels like the Lightning Road and Demon Mixed, where it really isn't that hard. It's especially crazy when you see the massive gap of difficulty between, like, I don't know, the Nightmare and Sidestep, which are both easy demons. But yeah, no, this is all just beating into the ground the concept that the Nightmare is not an easy demon. But to even more reinforce that, there is a remake of the Nightmare called, I think it's like the Nightmare 2018, which is the same level but slightly more difficult. And by more difficult, I mean there's like an extra input here and there. And it's rated 8-star. So, yeah, no, this level is not a demon. Next up, we have hitboxes, and this is a hard one to explain, so I will give a visual example. But realistically, all you need to know is that Geometry Dash has some of the worst hitboxes you can imagine. Like, I'm talking a Spike's hitbox being an extremely tiny little rectangle and stuff like that. What this can lead to is situations where you can straight up go through objects that are supposed to kill you. Like, instead of me just trying to verbally explain this, I'm going to create a, like, example level. It's going to be an auto, but I swear to God, there is no no-clip used. This is 100% authentic gameplay. So yeah, that's what the hitboxes point is referring to. Now, what's especially funny about this game's hitboxes is if you have a hacking tool like, say, Megahack, you can actually look at the game's hitboxes in-game, and, like, the Spike hitbox looks like this, among other hitboxes that you can see with this hack, and they're all just really, really funny. So, yeah, no, the hitboxes for this game are really bad, which is hilarious. So the next one is a slight typo, but that's okay, because people will know what it's referring to. Bloodbath versus Plasma Pulse Finale, which it should say Bloodlust versus Plasma Pulse Finale, so a little retcon there. Bloodlust versus Plasma Pulse Finale is referring to an event in the community where people were heavily debating what was harder, Bloodlust or Plasma Pulse Finale. The debate got really toxic and led to a lot of really toxic fighting in the community, only for, you know, the levels to get placed on the Demons list, and Bloodlust is a solid 15 points above Plasma Pulse Finale, so needless to say, Bloodlust is way harder. But yeah, it's just bizarre how people fought over these two completely different in difficulty levels, debating which one was harder. Next up we have Don't Fade, Don't Enter. Don't Fade, Don't Enter is a setting in the editor, and it's a very useful one, because if you look at a lot of Geometry Dash levels, a lot of them have this effect, which I'm showing on screen here. The effect basically makes it so things on the right-hand side sort of fade in, and things on the left sort of fade out. That is what Fade and Enter is. So if you enable Don't Fade and Don't Enter, the level is just on screen in its entirety, which makes it look a lot smoother. So there's sort of a meme in the Geometry Dash community of, like, don't forget to use Don't Fade, Don't Enter, and if, like, a level gets rated without Don't Fade, Don't Enter, the level will get a little bit more hate than normal. Levels do look really bad with Fade and Enter, so it's just kind of funny that the levels look bad by default. And it's kind of funny, too, because a lot of people don't even know what Don't Fade, Don't Enter does, so they just don't touch the settings. Okay, so next up we have Fingerbng. What this point on the iceberg is referring to is that the Geometry Dash level Finger Dash, which is the 21st main level, its song is not actually called Finger Dash, despite it being credited as such in the game's soundtrack menu. No, the song is actually Fingerbng by MDK, and obviously the name of the level was changed for, like, you know, family-friendly reasons, as it'd be pretty bad if a child-friendly game had a level called Fingerbng. But it's so weird, too. Like, I don't know why the song is called that, because, like, it has nothing to do with that, and the song is actually PG as fuck, so, like, just such a weird name for a song, and yeah. But this creates sort of a dilemma, where, like, on one hand, yeah, censor it so that you're not putting that in a kid's game, but on the other hand, the song's title is incorrect, so you're crediting the artist incorrectly. But I don't think it matters, because of course the game links directly to, like, their pages and stuff, so yeah, whatever. But it's so weird. Like, just a really, really weird situation. I remember this being a big deal when 2.1 came out, to the point where those, like, Rob Top level full levels, which are just extensions to the Rob Top levels that use the entire song, they just straight up called the Finger Dash extensions Fingerbng, which is hilarious. But yeah, really weird situation with the song. Next up we have 2.2. So 2.2 is referring to the update that is, as of recording this, yet to be released. It may be released by the time this video is out. Who knows? People are saying the update's going to come out soon. I don't necessarily know about that, because what's so infamous about 2.2 is that it's a one single update that's been in the works for half of the game's existence, or over half now. The update is extremely large, boasting, I don't even know how many features. A lot of features, that's all I really need to say. The features are pretty groundbreaking, stuff like Swingcopter game mode, the ability to move in different directions. It's not like mirror portals where it just flips the level, like you're actually going the other way in the level, like you really are flipping directions. You're going to be able to walk on walls with the spider. You're going to be able to do a lot of crazy shit. Like, it's going to be a huge update. With a lot of new triggers. I believe RobTop said there was over 500 new icons. Like, this is probably going to change the game as we know it. It's going to be fucking massive, right? There's a platformer mode, which is basically where you control your left to right movement, which is really bizarre. You know, there's just going to be a lot of cool stuff, and, yeah, big, massive update has been in the works for, like, what, 5 years now? It's been a long time coming. Next up we have the Documentaries point, and this one isn't as complicated as the other points. It's just referring to the fact that the Geometry Dash community has some YouTubers that make extremely high-effort documentaries. It's to the extent that one YouTuber that was known for these, C1997, branched off and started making documentaries about stuff like space, You know, they were able to make real documentaries because they got this sort of leg up from Geometry Dash documentaries. These are actually, like, really high effort and really huge. Like, these are impressive. Like, people will go into the entire history of one level being verified, and it ends up being, like, a big event involving several people, and stuff like that, right? Like, these documentaries are really well made, and I highly recommend checking them out. But yeah, it's just a really cool thing to see people put so much effort into something. Next up, we have Just Don't. Just Don't is referring to a setting within the Geometry Dash settings menu. If enabled, it causes a bunch of really funny effects. Some of these effects include flipping the attempt counter upside down, making it so if you get a new best, the level insults you and quotes memes, flipping the level complete text upside down, etc., etc. There's quite a few effects, and it is pretty funny. Overall, it just appears to be a pretty obvious and easy to find Easter egg. And next up, we have the Swedish time zone. This is a funny point, but it's not like a joke, it's serious, it's just kind of funny. So the developer, RobTop Games, is actually Swedish, and because of this, the game uses the Swedish time zone regardless of where you live. What this results in is funny situations like daily levels being put up at 5 o'clock at night for people who live in America. And with that, we have finished Tier 3. Let us move on to Tier 4. Next up, we have Hell Levels. So Hell Levels is a trend that's kind of existed in the game as long as the game's existed, or at least as long as demons have existed. And I mean, it makes sense. The hardest difficulty in the game being called Demon difficulty, there would be a trend about, like, hell or, you know, evil or whatever. But the hell levels are, by basic definition, a level in which the decoration is red and black, and the level's atmosphere is supposed to give off an intimidating or scary feel. Now, a lot of people have criticized hell levels because there's so many of them. People often say that a lot of hell levels are the same, and, you know, that stuff. But when you really look at the variety of hell levels, I'm gonna go and disagree. Because hell levels include stuff like the obvious stuff, like Bloodbath, Cataclysm, but then you could also put stuff in like Reanimation, 9 Circles. You could put in like Boom Slayer, you know? All of these levels look so different, yet they all follow the trend of being hell levels. Realistically, I don't think this is a trend that's ever gonna die out. And I don't know if I'm upset with that, because honestly, I really do like a lot of these hell levels. Okay, so next up is GDHM. GDHM is referring to an alternative to Megahack called Geometry Dash Hacker Mode. Beyond the cheesy title, this mod menu is actually really fucking impressive. It's free, so unlike Megahack, it's, you know, you don't have to pay for it, which has that going for it. I actually used this mod menu before I paid for Megahack, and I have experience with both, but Hacker Mode does not have a lot of features that Megahack does. For instance, you can't switch between start positions. I mean, like, maybe it has these features. I mean, as of the recording this, as of
Hacker Mode
most recent update, it does not have these features. But for the most part, it's just a little bit farther back. But honestly, the features it's missing, you kinda really don't need. Like, it has FPS bypass, it has no clip, it has fucking anti-cheat bypass, but you have to turn it on. It has a lot of features. Also, it does have something that Megahack does not, and that's a built-in taskbot. You can record macros, you can save macros, and you can replay macros. The downside is there will be a tiny little watermark that's kind of hard to see, but it's there. But aside from that, it's actually a really good mod menu. And if you don't want to pay for Megahack, if you're one of those people that thinks it's immoral for people to profit off modifying a dev's code, well, there you go. You can get this one for free. There are downsides, of course, like, unlike Megahack, Windows Defender thinks that it's a virus, so you have to, like, turn off Defender. On top of the fact that it can just be really, really finicky. Like, I've had multiple instances of having to download
hacker mode
just to replace files because they've disappeared from the install. And the biggest downside of them all is that Megahack installs via an installer, which makes it just 2 clicks and a sign-in away, whereas with
hacker mode
you have to drag and drop the files yourself, so you have to be pretty familiar with the Geometry Dash files. But aside from that, it's really, really good. This is one of the longer points because I had a lot to explain, and there will be further down the iceberg, there will be more points that take a long time to explain like this, but for now, there you go. Just wanted to add this in as an editor's note because I forgot to say it, and it's really, really important when deciding between Megahack and Hacker Mode as your choice of mod menu. Megahack gets updated, sure, but Hacker Mode gets updated, like, a lot, and I mean a lot. Literally, as I was recording this, Hacker Mode got a massive update, and it's really, really big. Like, the update adds, like, fucking custom backgrounds, being able to replace the GD background with a GIF file, being able to add animated objects into the editor, and all this crazy shit. So, in reality, while Hacker Mode is behind Megahack, not by a lot, and it's constantly being updated with new features. And the other thing to consider is, while Megahack has features exclusive to it, Hacker Mode also has features exclusive to it. Like, Hacker Mode has the ability to change your display FPS settings and your physics FPS settings separately. So if you want 300 FPS physics but 60 FPS visuals, you can do that. But yeah, I'm just gonna put this into the video, and let's move on to the next point. Next up is Sorry Riot. Sorry Riot is referring to a message after the drop in the realistic. The message is put there for a pretty interesting reason, actually. So, y'all know creator Riot, he was mentioned on the iceberg already. Riot was on a quest to beat every rated 9 circles level, and part of that quest was beating this level. But Riot was one of the first people in the community to play on 144 Hz. This is significant as this level originally had a 144 Hz bug, making it impossible, or, at very least, very inconsistent. Because of that, Riot died to the very end of the level. The text now resides within the level as, you know, a sort of joke apology. As it stands, it's kind of a historic moment in the community because this one moment kind of showed the community how different the game's physics can work on different frame rates. Next up we have Peaceful. Peaceful is a level made by Xylonox and Small. This level is insanely high detail and well decorated, and it is a horror level. The point of the level is you go in and it's all cartoony and happy, but then as you start to play, the level gets all distorted and creepy and demonic and a lot of trypophobia imagery. The thing about this level is that you can't actually beat it. It's impossible. Not because the gameplay is too difficult or anything. From what I've heard, people have said it's around medium demon difficulty. No, the reason it's impossible and you can't beat it is because the level is too dense with objects, so you can't run it. Basically, if you tried to play this level, your computer would freeze. But people have, and I'm not entirely familiar with how this works, but from what I understand, people figured out that if you, like, either lower your frame rate or slow the level down or something like that, you can kind of speed the footage up and it looks like a normal playthrough. Again, I have no idea how it works, but yeah. Originally the level was just a solo project from Small, but when, you know, his game kept crashing because of how dense the object limit is, Xylonox took the level and finished it with permission from small. Flappy Bird is referring to a forgotten trend in the Geometry Dash community of levels that were quite literally just Flappy Bird, but easier and or harder, depending on the level you picked. These levels all followed the same format. It would just be a bunch of pillars organized to resemble the pipes from Flappy Bird and UFO gameplay. Some of the levels you could slide on the quote-unquote pipes. In other levels there would be spikes there, so you would die, much like the original Flappy Bird. I just need to point out that these levels were fucking everywhere, and the majority of them got rated. If you guys think the hell level trend is overdone, or, you know, the generic style is overdone, or anything like that, or like the 9 circles trend is overdone, this tops that. There are so many levels, and you mainly notice this if you're star grinding. There are so many levels that are literally just this. Well, that's a minute and 13 seconds of my life wasted. And some of them are XLs. They're not fun. And the majority of the community agrees, because into 2.0, and especially into 2.1, less and less of these levels started to be made, to the point where they're not really made anymore. Runtime Errors is referring to a phenomenon within the game in which sometimes the game will give you a runtime error, and oftentimes it happens when you back out of certain levels, but other times it happens when you open levels, sometimes it happens when you go into the editor. It's not entirely known what causes it, but there are a couple things that are known to cause it. It's believed that it has something to do with object count, because a lot of people have noted that if you open a level that's extremely dense with objects, if you open a level like that and then back out and go to do something else, the game will freak out and that'll cause a runtime error. Oftentimes for me, because I've gotten these errors, it seems to happen if I play a level that's dense with objects and then go to the title screen. I remember I went to try to play Brainfuck, which is a level we're going to talk about later, and I couldn't run it because it was really slow. This is on my old computer, not the one I have now. So I tried to run it, it was too laggy, so I backed out, and it gave me a runtime error on the title screen. Yeah, it's a bizarre phenomenon. I don't know entirely what causes it, but I do have experience with it. Comment help is referring to a little bit of an Easter egg in the game. If you go into an online level, press the button to view the comments, press the button to post a comment, and then press the help button, the information card that the game gives you to teach you what each button does and stuff just says, "This is the comment help. You're welcome." And it's really tongue-in-cheek and funny, and yeah, that's all that is. So, the Demon Gauntlet Softlock is something I don't personally have experience with, but I know how to do and I know exists. It just never happened to me. I know that this mostly affects PC players with AMD graphic cards because of a bug within the game. And if you're curious about that bug, it's quite literally just, if you have any, like, pop-up menus open, like the quests, the daily levels, the weekly demons, the text dialogue that happens at some parts of the game, these, if you back out of them, cause the screen to go black, and then if you back out of the whatever menu the black screen's on, it'll go back to normal. But the thing is, if you don't back out of that black screen quick enough, the game will crash. So, it's a weird bug, no one really knows why it happens, and it seems to only happen to AMD graphic card users. I, of course, am one of these people. So, the thing about it is there's kind of an unfortunate side effect when it comes to the gauntlets that's caused by this. So if you don't know, the gauntlet progression is pretty straightforward. You have a bunch of gauntlets given to you, you can play any of them in any order, and it's, you know, nothing's weird about them, it's pretty simple. The thing is there is one gauntlet you cannot access by normal means, and that is the Demon Gauntlet. The Demon Gauntlet to date is the only gauntlet that you actually have to unlock. The thing about that is, to unlock it requires a really complicated side quest, and in that side quest what you essentially have to do is you go into one of the vaults, you play a level called the Challenge, and once you play it you gain access to this vault's basement. You go in, and there's this little demon guy. He tells you to free him by collecting 3 keys and using it to unlock the door. These keys are pretty straightforward to get, the hardest one being the Chaos Gauntlet, which requires you to, you know, beat the Chaos Gauntlet. The other 2 keys are really easy, however. One is open 50 chests in the treasure room, and the other is to access the Chamber of Time, which is another vault. The thing is, if you get all 3 of these keys, and the black screen flicker bug happens, it can potentially cause a softlock if you're not careful. So, I'm not 100% on what specifically causes it, but from what I understand, if you back out of the menu really quickly before the animation of the gate opening plays, when you go back into the basement, the gate will still be shut, but the keys won't be there, which means you can never free the gauntlet guy in the basement, which means you can never unlock the Demon Gauntlet, which means you're soft-locked. And because 2.2, whenever it comes out, might potentially add stuff in that requires beating the Demon Gauntlet to access, that's even more devastating. But even if that doesn't happen, and the Demon Gauntlet is the end of that arc of the story, and you don't need it to do anything in 2.2, it's still a softlock because you can't beat the Demon Gauntlet, which means you can't beat all the gauntlets. The reason this mainly affects AMD users the most is because, like I mentioned, the softlock is caused by backing out too quickly. And with AMD users, every time the basement guy's dialogue closes, the screen goes black. So a lot of people during this dialogue might be mashing the escape key so that they don't crash. Oh, I should also mention, I believe crashes can cause the softlock too. So it's all around just not a fun time for AMD users. Of course, if you have something like Megahack, you can bypass this entirely and get access to the Demon Gauntlet anyway, which is nice because people who experience the softlock can, you know, fix it. But if you don't have access to Megahack or Geometry Dash Hacker mode for whatever reason, unfortunately fixing this softlock would require starting a new save file entirely, which is never fun, because if you're in a position like me, you might have over, like, 7,000 stars, like, you know, hundreds of demons, and that's just not fun. So a lot of people, when this softlock happens, they just choose to kind of not play the Demon Gauntlet, which is fair. Newgrounds versus Geometry Dash is a situation I don't fully understand, but from what I gather has to do with copyrighted songs. So, I don't know how the Newgrounds community and the Geometry Dash community are now, but I know in Update 1.9 they fucking hated each other, and there is a reason for that. Admittedly, I get where Newgrounds is coming from this, and I'm gonna just explain what happened. So from what I gather, in Update 1.9, when the ability to use custom songs was first added, this created a huge problem. Basically, creators from the Geometry Dash community were flooding Newgrounds and uploading really dumb shit. Basically, they were uploading stuff like, you know, Skrillex GD Remix 2, which was literally just first of the year, but with the lyrics and the piano part removed. So it's literally just intro and then drop. This song was mainly used for the level theory of Skrillex, but it's also been used elsewhere. And there are many, many more examples of highly copyrighted songs just being ripped and uploaded to Newgrounds for the purpose of being put in a Geometry Dash level. This got so bad that, from what I understand, people started uploading mainstream, highly popular copyrighted songs, and Newgrounds just couldn't handle it. Because, like, you know, this is obviously really dangerous from a copyright and law perspective, so the people on Newgrounds started to get really, really pissed off. There was also the aspect that you could just use any song on Newgrounds. You didn't have to do anything. All you had to do was take a song ID and just plop it in the game, which created another issue of some song artists don't want their music being used in Geometry Dash for, you know, any other reason. Like, some had different reasons than others, but a lot of artists might not want their music used in Geometry Dash, which creates another problem of not asking artists permission to use their songs, which, from what I understand, was a huge sticking point. Eventually, all of this culminated with Newgrounds adding a feature, in which if you upload a song to their site, there is a tab that you can select in the Advanced tab, labeled Allow External API Use, and then in brackets it says Geometry Dash, as if clarifying that that's what this is for. Basically, if you check this box, your music can be used in Geometry Dash. So if you do not check this box, your music cannot be used in Geometry Dash. You, like, actually have to scroll down and check this yourself for it to be used. Another thing to note, and don't quote me on this because I'm not entirely sure, this is just stuff I've heard from other people, but from what I understand, you actually have to be scouted in order for your music to be used. This severely limits what songs can and can't be used in Geometry Dash, but not as much as you'd think, because a lot of artists on Newgrounds are actually really chill and just allow it. So most songs on the site do work anyway, but a decent chunk of them don't work. Adding that to the fact that in Geometry Dash itself, some songs just straight up get banned because of copyright and stuff, and yeah. This all actually has a ripple effect that's felt to this day. Mainly the fact that people still really don't like Newgrounds. Basically, ever since all of this has been happening, and the developers even thought and toyed with the idea, a lot of people really want RobTop to make his own music website, or add SoundCloud support, one of the two. Basically so that you can use music from a completely different website in Geometry Dash. And I don't know how that would work, but this is basically what the discussion has delved into at this point. It's people want a new music site to work with the game. FreeNpesta is referring to an event in the Geometry Dash community where YouTuber Nepesta had his entire channel demonetized, literally because YouTube couldn't tell the difference between two completions of the same level. And because of that, YouTube labeled him as reusing content. Which, can I just go on a tangent and say that really confuses me? Content farms like ElsaGate have been known to reuse content, but they get monetized perfectly fine, so I don't get... whatever, just ignoring that. Basically, yeah, his entire channel got demonetized, so what happened is one of the biggest trending incidents in the GD community happened, where they got FreeNpesta trending on Twitter. Eventually, this resulted in Nepesta actually getting remonetized by YouTube, so it was effective. And overall, this was a pretty big event. And it also resulted into our next topic, which is FreeRiot. FreeRiot was an incident that started several years ago, but ended as a direct result of FreeNpesta. So FreeRiot requires context. I don't remember the exact year, but some point in the mid-2010s, Riot's channel was doing pretty good. until one day he decided to announce that he was streaming on Twitch. And his method of doing so was to upload, I believe it was like a 7-second video where the screen was black and there was white text that just said, like, "I'm live on Twitch, come join," and in the description was a link to his Twitch account. Now, I didn't know this, and apparently no one fucking knew this. Apparently that's against YouTube's TOS, which confuses me because people do it all the time without consequence. But just like that, YouTube took down Riot's channel, which was completely unfair. For the entire rest of the second half of the 2010s, Riot tried to get his channel back and tried to get in contact with YouTube to no avail, until finally, in 2020, FreeNpesta happens. And during FreeNpesta, once Nepesta gets his channel undemonetized and FreeNpesta just ends, Riot on a whim decides to tweet YouTube and explain his situation once again for the first time in about a year. And to his surprise, YouTube immediately gave Riot his channel back. So, FreeNpesta indirectly led to Riot getting his channel back, which is huge. Unloadable levels is referring to a phenomenon within the game in which if a level is extremely dense with objects but is really short, like, say, you copy 10,000 of the same block in one block at the start of the level, something like that, the level will refuse to load. Basically, you'll hit the play button, the screen will fade to black, but then it'll cut right back to the title screen. It's very, very weird, and there is a mod in Megahack that allows you to load these levels, but usually that results in a runtime error. Next up we have Advyout, which I'm not going to get too in-depth on this iceberg because I already made 2 videos on the subject on my GD channel. But the long and short of it, YouTuber Advy Styles, or Guitar Hero Styles, got exposed for pedophilia, possible rape, and overall just is not a good person. The main thing that's important about this situation is that, the situation got something trending on Twitter, which doesn't usually happen that often with the GD community, but even more importantly, his channel is still up to this day despite the shit he did, which is obviously bad. Just to give you an idea of how big this guy is in the community, look up a completion for any of the levels from the spin-off games, like Geometry Dash and Knock'em 100%. I guarantee you Guitar Hero Styles video is like the first thing to come up. Also, quick side note, as an editor's note, when I was grabbing the footage of Guitar's channel coming up when you search for Knock'em, he was streaming, so I decided to click on Guitar Hero Styles' stream just to see what his chat looked like and see if it was filled with, like, Advyouts or not. And he put his chat in sub-only mode, which proves that he's just trying to hide what happened from his fan base. I just wanted to point that out because I noticed it while I was editing. So yeah, him getting away with this is obviously really, really bad. Overall, you can look into the situation if you want. It's just a really bad situation. And with that, we have finished Tier 4. So let's move on to Tier 5. Flow state is something I'm not really able to explain due to just not fully understanding, but I'm gonna do my best because this is something really interesting. Effectively, the best way I could explain flow state is it's a state of mind you get into where when you play video games where you are so focused that everything around you seems to disappear, and rather than being a human being controlling a character in a game, you are the character in the game. It's like this extreme sense of heightened focus, almost like a trance, right? Where muscle memory and hand-eye coordination take over all other senses, and you start getting these huge boosts in skill very, very quickly, and all that stuff, right? Well, a lot of people might relate to this. I mean, some people have straight up, you know, explained that, yeah, they feel this way. And like I said, I'm not the best at explaining this, but the important thing to gather here is that flow state is a state of mind that makes you progress in skill much quicker and focus on the game much harder. There are videos that delve into this way better than I can, and I am not qualified to explain this in the slightest, but what I can tell you is that being in a flow state allows you to get better at a game way faster. So the thing is, and lots of people have already done this, you can apply this to Geometry Dash. If you're playing Geometry Dash and you enter a flow state, you can progress in skill way faster than you know, normal. On top of the fact that it can allow you to beat levels more consistently and overall just have a heightened sense of focus. It's really, really hard to describe, so what I'll do is, if you really want to know more about this, there are videos about how flow state can benefit Geometry Dash players. I recommend looking them up. They're really good, because they probably explain this 1,000 times better than I can. But essentially, flow state is just a trance-like state of mind that helps you focus on games more and get better at them. The best way I can explain this is the ultimate example of, like, you're watching a movie and you're not watching a character play Luke Skywalker, say, for instance, it's Star Wars. You're not watching a character play Luke Skywalker, like, it's not an actor. You are watching Luke Skywalker, because you're so sucked into the movie, your disbelief is completely suspended. Flow state is basically that, but for games. But yeah, no, this is a very, you know, state of mind type thing to explain, and I am definitely not the right person to explain this, so I'm just gonna move on. So you might be wondering why Mirror Portals is so far down the list, and that's because it's going deep into Mirror Portals. It's not just what they are and what they do, it's referring to all the hate they get. But to start off as a starting point, Mirror Portals are a mechanic. I believe they were introduced in the level Time Machine, and what they do is, if you go through them, the screen sort of rotates and it makes it look like you're looking at a level through a mirror. This is not the same as 2.2's direction changes. You're still going through the level normally, it just flips the screen. It's literally like if you held your computer monitor up to a mirror. So the thing about Mirror Portals and why they get so much hate is because of their animation. When you go through a Mirror Portal, it slowly and painstakingly rotates the screen, which, if there's gameplay right after or during the Mirror Portal, which that happens a lot, it even happens in Time Machine, it can be very, very annoying. There are a lot of levels where Mirror Portals make them significantly difficult. The example of this I love to give is Crimson Clutter. Crimson Clutter, from what I understand, is a 9 circles level. I mean, that's the obvious part, it's a circles level, but from what I understand, it's around mid-tier Insane Demon difficulty. It's not, you know, bordering on extreme, but it's not an easy Insane Demon either. From what people who have beaten Crimson Clutter have said, is that the reason it's so difficult is that there are Mirror Portal transitions during the wave gameplay, and this really proves the point. Mirror Portals are able to make a level significantly harder, but the thing is that difficulty is pure bullshit, because the only reason it makes levels so much harder is because it makes it harder to see with that dumb fucking animation. Obviously, if you can't tell, a lot of people hate Mirror Portals. Some so to the extent where if a level has a Mirror Portal, they just will not play it, which I can't blame them. But yeah, no, Mirror Portals are infamously hated, and I believe the last level to use them in the main Geometry Dash levels is Electroman Adventures. So the next point is lost media, and believe it or not, yes, the Geometry Dash community does have lost media. There are many examples of this from what I understand, but the examples I love to give is the Alphabet series. The Alphabet series is a very, very famous series of levels, even though only some of the levels are known. The only level in this series to be truly famous is Alphabet X. The Alphabet series is very infamous because a lot of the levels in the series are lost. Forgive me as I'm about to name a lot of levels, but Alphabet B, Alphabet C, Alphabet D, Alphabet K, Alphabet N, Alphabet O, Alphabet P, Alphabet S, Alphabet T, Alphabet U, Alphabet V, and Alphabet S, L, and F are all lost media. With everything I just put on you in mind, this is just one series of levels. If you look around in the community enough, there are many, many examples of lost levels like this. And yeah, it's really, really bizarre because, I mean, it makes sense. This game at the, beginning back in like 1.0 to 1.7 wasn't like huge. It was popular, but specifically the community wasn't huge yet, so it makes sense that there's some lost media. But the Alphabet series is only one example. There are also completion videos that are lost, and it's just a huge rabbit hole you can go down. But yeah, the Geometry Dash community has lost media. Next up, we have the star Rate UFO, which is infamously the hardest icon to unlock in the game. Unlocking it requires you to have one of your levels rated on the game's server. That would have been easy in the older updates of the game. The problem is now rate standards are really high, so getting this icon is unnecessarily difficult. A lot of people will verify existing creators' levels and with permission to upload it to their account. That way they don't have to create a level to unlock it, which is one of the many reasons verifications are so, popular. The next point on the iceberg is Ocular Miracle. Ocular Miracle is a really, really long extreme demon with really breathtaking decoration and backgrounds, and it's overall just a beautiful level. The level took 41 people in 6 months to create. Yeah, you heard that right. 41 people. Originally Sir Geister, which is a name I never knew how to pronounce. Originally, he was going to verify it, but he dropped it due to lack of motivation, and it was given to Technical, who verified it on June 11th of 2020. Now, the thing about Ocular Miracle is that the level, it's kind of broken. See, the thing is, a lot of people found out with Ocular Miracle that a lot of weird stuff would happen to your game if you played it due to the object count. Some of these things included every single texture in the game turning black, runtime errors, which we mentioned earlier, and worst of all, the reason the level got unrated was the fact that, oddly enough, if you played the level, backed out, and then played it again, sometimes the level would just become completely empty and you could beat it without actually beating it. Almost as like a secret way of sorts. Because of this, the level got unrated, and the creators obviously didn't want to just throw the level away, so what they did is they sort of split the level into 3 parts. The parts of the level are Reverie, Faith, and Diligence, and effectively what they've done is they've made the beginning of the level one level, the middle of the level another level, and the end another level. From what I understand, the difficulty of each part varies, so they kinda get placed in different tiers of difficulty. From what I can tell, Reverie is an insane demon, and Faith and Diligence are both extreme demons. Which, can I just say, that goes to show how difficult Ocular Miracle is. Like, put this into perspective. To beat Ocular Miracle, you have to beat 2 extreme demons and an insane demon. Really think about that. But yeah, no, the level was broken, so it got unrated, but despite the unrate, people still do try to beat it, and people do succeed, and it's a really good level. If you decide to look into the level yourself, by the way, this will explain why I'm not using footage of the level, it's got some really bad flashing lights, so be careful with that, but yeah. The next point on the iceberg is 2.2 bugs. RobTop in a post said that 2.2 is going to be the buggiest update in the game, which is terrifying considering some of the bugs that already exist in the game. I mentioned Documentaries earlier in the iceberg, and I'm going to recommend a specific one. There's a video by the YouTuber Stormy called The 312 Bugs in Geometry Dash. It's a really good video. It gives you a good idea of how buggy the game is. At the 38-minute and 17-second mark, he starts talking about why he's not showing some of the bugs on his list, the final ones.
There are a couple of bugs that I still have on my list, but I am not allowed to mention them. And there's a very good reason for that. The amount of damage that some of these bugs can cause are way too dangerous to actually present publicly. And for that reason, I'm gonna say that, trust me on this one, I do have more bugs, but I really should not mention them publicly.
If there are bugs that can cause that much harm, and 2.2 is even buggier, that's horrifying. A lot of people have theorized that 2.2 is actually going to destroy the game because of this, which I hope not. I do want to mention, I'm hoping to get this video out before 2.2, so if this point on the iceberg becomes outdated when 2.2 comes out, bear in mind that it's not actually outdated, because here's the thing, just because a bug hasn't been discovered doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and just because the update doesn't seem that buggy doesn't mean a bug exists. Like, a bug could exist that you do not know about, and who knows, that bug could destroy the game. So this isn't necessarily an outdated point if 2.2 disproves it, just pointing that out. The next point on the iceberg is Riot didn't beat every Circles level. Pretty self-explanatory. Evidence of this is actually pretty straightforward, and it's that Riot beat every 9 Circles level except for Head Rush. He missed Head Rush. Now, this doesn't, like, devalue Riot or anything like that, and that's not why this is important. The reason this is important is because this would mean Jake SJ was actually the first person to beat every 9 Circles level, which is pretty insane. GD World is 2.2. This one requires some background and explanation. So there's a known bug in Geometry Dash World that allows you to access the editor. Basically what you have to do is you have to own the full game, you download World, and with World, what you have to do is sign into your account that you're logged into with the full game, make a level, upload it, and then play it on the server. Once you do that, it'll be in your Saved Levels tab. Save to the cloud, and then load from the cloud on World. From there, you can actually access that saved level and copy it. Once you copy it, you can access the editor. The fun thing about that is that if you look through the editor, Geometry Dash World's editor actually has a lot of 2.2's features in it, like the reverse jump rings and stuff like that. The downsides being you can't save levels, you have to build levels in one sitting, and stuff like that. But it is kind of cool because you can mess around with a lot of the features. So Level Leaks is referring to an event that happened a while back in the community. I don't fully know the situation, so, like, you know, on a scale of 1 to 5, I know, like, nothing. But basically, from what I understand, a bunch of creators had their accounts hacked into en masse, and when this happened, a bunch of their unfinished levels got leaked to the public, much to the annoyance of the creators. I'm sure that there are other people who could document this way better than I could, but yeah, that's basically the story. Next up, we have Daily Chat. Daily Chat is referring to the fact that whenever a level is set as the daily, that level's comment section gets used as almost like a massive chat room in which a bunch of people talk to each other. This thing is infamous for being extremely toxic and filled with children, so Bluetooth is referring to the fact that if you play Geometry Dash with any sort of Bluetooth technology, at best it can make the game more annoying, at worst it can make it fucking unplayable. And all of these do things in different ways. First and foremost, if you use a Bluetooth keyboard or mouse, this can result in inputs being delayed. Basically, if I click, how long it takes for the cube to jump after I click. But the worst example is Bluetooth headphones, whereas if you play Geometry Dash with a set of Bluetooth headphones or earbuds in, the sound will be delayed from the visuals, which results in this weird effect where the song plays a couple seconds off from where it should be, and trust me when I say that it's really annoying, because it kills sync for most levels. Next up we have Spwn. Spwn is a coding language developed by Sputniks that allows you to convert raw code to Geometry Dash levels. As difficult as this is to use compared to the editor, this allows for insane optimization and insane, speed in regards to level design. The amount of stuff people have made with this is insane. Not to mention, there's various plugins and forks of Spawn that allow you to do a lot of interesting stuff, like convert 3D modeled objects to Geometry Dash objects and stuff like that. It's really impressive, and if you want more information, a lot of videos are found about it on Sputniks' channel. Next up we have code. This is referring to the fact that even though a lot of people out there understand the code of Geometry Dash, no one can really decide whether or not the game is coded well or not. And I've seen heated debates about it online too, but the code of this game seems to be one of the biggest debates from the people who truly understand the game's code. Some people say the game's code is really, really bad and really, really buggy. Some people say cut it slack because it was made by one developer, which I agree with, by the way. And some people say that the code is actually really, really good and that most of these bugs is caused by oversights. Regardless, if you want to know more about the game's code, there are people you could probably talk to that are more qualified than me, because I've never taken a deep dive into the game's code. What I can say, though, is even more fascinatingly beyond, the typed up in script code, is the way the code calls to game files. It's really, really interesting, not because of the way the code works, because, again, I'm not qualified to explain that. More or less, a lot of the code is easy to edit because it's all contained in notepad files that you can easily access, which leads to stuff like customizing the amount of particles are produced by a trail and stuff like that. However, that's not actually the code, that's just a script that the code calls to, and code is a complicated subject. But what's really interesting here is the way the code takes away from the game's files, because unlike most video games where if you replace a game file it'll do nothing, this is a case where, replacing a file could change the game in unseen ways. This is how stuff like texture packs are so easy to implement. And for the people who are going to try to correct me, let me be very, very clear. I 100% understand that there is a difference between code, scripts, and game files. What I'm more referring to is that usually the code has some sort of safeguard to where if you change game files, it corrects them the next time you run the game. Interestingly enough, this game does not have that, which again makes it really easy to modify this game. Next up we have NONG songs. NONG songs, or Not on Newgrounds songs, is referring to a trend that's popped up recently as of Update 2.0 in response to songs being banned on Newgrounds. To which people ask the question, if we can't use these songs on Newgrounds, what if we just don't use Newgrounds at all? See, as I mentioned in the point about code, it is extremely easy to modify the game's files, and that includes online levels and online songs. Most songs in the game have a song ID, anywhere from 1 to 7 digits in length, and I don't know if the game supports 7-digit song IDs. We'll do 6-digit song IDs for the sake of simplicity. Basically, if you use a song like, say we have song ID 696969, right? I don't fucking know if that's a real song ID, but we'll use it. Whatever song ID that is, right? Say it's At the Speed of Light by Dim Rain, right? Because I don't actually know the song ID off the top of my head. What you would essentially do is, say you wanted to use, I don't know, Gangster's Paradise as your level song. All you'd have to do is download an MP3 of Gangster's Paradise, name the file 696969.mp3, drop it in the resources folder, and if you already have At the Speed of Light, replace the song, and then the next time you use At the Speed of Light in your level, you'll hear Gangster's Paradise. And this is extremely useful for using songs that are not on Newgrounds. And this is where the trend of not on Newgrounds songs has come from. People doing this to make levels that they normally wouldn't be able to make. On top of this, levels that have banned songs but already exist, like, say, Theory of Skrillex, all you have to do to get that song back in the game, despite it being banned, is to just take the file off of YouTube. Like, you just run the song through a YouTube to MP3 converter, and then afterwards name the file, the song ID, drop it in the game, and then when you hit download, it'll say this song is not available for download, but the download button will disappear and the song will play. So, yeah, it's really useful, but it's also a bit of a debate within the Geometry Dash community, because levels with NONG songs frequently get rated, like Cold Sweat, for instance. My favorite example is F, which is a good level, by the way. F is a really good level. But F is a prime example where people don't know whether or not a level should be rated if the song doesn't exist, which is a really interesting debate that I have no input on because I use NONG songs. Next up, we have Brainfuck. Brainfuck is a Geometry Dash level made by Sputniks, that's right, the creator of Spwn, in which you have to code in the Brainfuck coding language in order to beat the level. Now, the reason that's so difficult is because Brainfuck is a coding language basically designed to be confusing to use. Like, example, this is a Hello World script written in Brainfuck. So, with that in mind, this is a Geometry Dash level in which you have to code in this coding language in order to beat it, which is kinda hilarious. The reason it's so low down on the iceberg, though, is because it brings up a point. Sputniks created the ability to code within a level. And it's not the same as coding within the editor or using a coding language to put stuff in the editor. This is a level in which you can code in the level itself. Now, that should be kinda terrifying if you really think about it. And with that, we have finished Tier 5 and reached the halfway point. So let's move on to Tier 6. Next up, we have ship gravity physics. Now, what this is referring to is the fact that the ship and many other game modes have slightly different physics depending on if they are upside down or right side up. The best example I could think of is with the ship, because it's so egregious that if you have a specific setup where the ship can go up and down and the blocks are spaced identical distance apart, it can be so bad that the ship survives one and not the other. I will show a clip from Stormy's bug video because this is the best example I could think to show.
Normal and reverse gravity has a different height, therefore some scenarios has to be approached differently.
Next up, we have God Eater. God Eater was a level created by Nobleboy and verified, eventually being rated by RobTop. The problem is the level actually contained traced art, and because of that, and very unfortunately, because the level looked really fucking good, the God Eater project sent Nobleboy a cease and desist. So in response, Nobleboy contacted RobTop, asking for the level and all traces of the level to be deleted. Because of this, if you type in the word God Eater in Geometry Dash, it's actually blacklisted. All hope was not lost, however, as eventually Nobleboy removed all the traced art and rebranded the level as Astral Divinity, in which he re-verified it and it was released and rated. Google Play bootlegs is referring to the fact that if you search Geometry Dash in the Google Play Store, the first things you'd see would make sense. It'd be Geometry Dash Lite, World, Sub-Zero, Meltdown, and Geometry Dash Full. But after that, you would see a lot of bootlegs, like actual bootlegs, stuff like Switch to Dash, or Geometry Jump, which, I mean, can we just appreciate the fact there's a bootleg called Geometry Jump, because the game was originally going to be called Geometry Jump? I'm sorry, but I find that really funny. But yeah, no, it's a weird world, because oftentimes these games are worse versions of Geometry Dash, with really buggy jump physics, no level sync, and in some cases, an endless level. So, some of them can be interesting, like Switch to Dash, which is a really interesting idea where the right side of the screen, if you tap, jumps, the left side switches your color, and the color of your cube has to match the color of the platform you land on. But yeah, most of them aren't unique. They're all just really shameless cash grabs. Cyclic vs. Riot is referring to an old community event back in 1.9 where Riot and Cyclic were competing to beat various demons, most infamously Sonic Wave and Bloodbath. These two were on a very even playing field, to the point where the community considered them both to have potentially the same amount of skill, although there were debates on who was actually better. But what mainly matters here is that later on, it got exposed that Cyclic was a hacker. The reason this is significant is because, not because Cyclic's a bad person or fuck Cyclic or anything like that, no. The reason this is significant is because Riot was successfully competing with a hacker.
There's no way he was a hacker this whole time. That was always a joke that he was like the best hacker ever. And it's real. Dude, I really don't understand. This is fucking surprise. Crazy. No, it cannot be real. I've been competing with a hacker the whole time.
No microtransactions is referring to the fact that the demo versions of Geometry Dash, which are Light, World, Sub-Zero, and Meltdown, all have no microtransactions. In fact, they don't really have that much monetization at all. All they really have is a banner ad on certain screens and an ad that pops up sometimes when you die. But they're really not that heavily monetized, which is pretty impressive considering it's a free mobile game on Google Play and iOS. When you really put that into perspective, almost every free version or free app on the Play Store has some kind of monetization. Yeah, there are exceptions here and there, but most free games have ads. But even more than that, considering Geometry Dash has an orb system where you can earn orbs and use them to unlock icons, it is insane that you don't pay for those in the free version. Because, like, a lot of people have expected that kind of microtransaction from the game, but it's just never happened. It's basically just impressive that this game exists financially without any sort of monetary boost in regards to microtransactions. Next up is porn levels. Now, I obviously cannot show any of these for obvious reason, but, and I'm not going to name any examples, because they've often been used to troll Twitch streamers who don't know any better. But Geometry Dash has a plethora of porn levels. Effectively, what'll happen is you'll click on a level with a seemingly innocent title, and when you click on it, you'll get like 3% in, and a pornographic image will flash on the screen. Alternatively, there is the ability to create art within the game. With the ability to make art comes the ability to draw pornography, both of which do happen within the game. Nintendo Switch port is referring to two different things. The first thing being that a lot of people really want a port of the game on the Nintendo Switch, which is a really cool idea if you think about it, because, like, think about it. The A button, and this is genuinely how I've always looked at it, the A button on the right Joy-Con could be one icon on the dual, and the left D-pad button on the other Joy-Con could be another button on the dual. Two Joy-Cons, two inputs for the dual. It just makes sense. It's really cool. But beyond that, the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode is essentially a tablet with buttons, which means touchscreen, Geometry Dash. But unfortunately, RobTop has said there are no plans for a Switch port as copyright issues, which makes sense. I will say, however, and this is the second thing it's referring to, the Nintendo Switch, if running Homebrew, actually can run Android. I mean, it can also run a lot of things. It can run Linux, but what matters here is it can run Android. Meaning, theoretically, you could run an unofficial port of Geometry Dash to the Switch. 2.2 coding is just simply asking the question, if we can do so much insane stuff with and in regards to code with Geometry Dash, like, if we can do stuff with Spwn, if we can do stuff with, you know, just all this coding-related shit, how advanced will the coding be in 2.2? Will we be able to do shit like making a working computer within Geometry Dash? Honestly, only time will tell, but it's pretty fucking exciting to think about. And with that, we have finished Tier 6. So let's move on to Tier 7. Next up, we have Retro Circles updates. Retro Circles to date has to be one of the most updated demons I've ever seen. And it's very bizarre, because in the original form, the level was pretty good, but people complained about the gameplay being annoying. Ever since then, it has been updated over and over and over and over and over again, almost unendingly, to get nerfed and redecorated, and nerfed again, have the end screen shortened, and it is just strange. This level has been updated so many times that if you play the very first release, which can be found by searching old Retro Circles or Retro Circles copyable, if you play the very first version of the level and then play the current version, it is bizarre how much easier and more different the current version is. And the fact that the end screen is shorter in the newer version means technically the level as a whole is shorter, and it's all just so weird. There are at least 3 versions of the level that have been documented, possibly 4, but I know that there's a lot more. Like, this level has been updated a seemingly endless amount of times. So, 666 is referring to a question. What happened to level ID 666? To explain, level IDs work like this, right? There will be a level assigned an ID of 1, that'll be the first level to ever be uploaded to the servers. The next level to be uploaded has an ID of 2, then 3, then 4, until we get all the way where we are the present day, where level IDs literally have 8-digit numbers. But even then, if you go into the recent tab, and then just look at every level, you can see as they're uploaded, as long as, you know, levels aren't deleted and stuff, every level is incrementing by 1 single digit. Yet, as we established earlier in the iceberg, the oldest playable level has an ID of 128. And there are levels after and before that number that just simply don't exist. So this begs the question, what happened to level ID 666? What did the level look like? Was it scary? Would it just be anticlimactic and disappointing and just another normal generic level? Who knows, maybe the creator even deleted the level because it had the ID of 666, was disturbed by that, deleted the level, and then re-uploaded it, and it has a completely different level ID. Who knows? But as far as we know, no one knows. And if you Google Geometry Dash level ID 666 or any variation of that, nothing comes up, aside from people clickbaiting. If you go into Geometry Dash itself and type in, you know, 666, which would trigger an ID search, nothing comes up. If you search ID 666 or level 666, you just get a bunch of generic, edgy levels that couldn't have been ID 666 because they all have custom songs. And it's all just such a brain fuck. Like, no one knows what this level looked like or was, to the point where it could theoretically be considered lost media. Man Man is referring to a level made by creator 2003 Devin. The level, which I will not be showing footage of for obvious reasons, contains gore, pornography, and is overall just designed to be a very shock value level. It's impossible to show footage of on YouTube without getting fucked over, although some people have managed to slip through the cracks somehow. But it's a very, very edgy and try-hard level, and it tries to be scary, but it's really not scary. It's just gory and contains pornography for the sake of being gory and contains pornography. When this level came out, it started a whole discussion in the community of, like, what is too far and what should and shouldn't exist in the game. All leading to eventually the level getting blacklisted on the servers, meaning you can only pull up the level if you go to 2003 Devin's account and scroll through his created levels. You can't search for it by name, with level IDs, or anything. The game modes are not new concepts is referring to exactly what the name says. Every single game mode in the game is either inspired off itself or off some other source material. For instance, and most famously, the Cube is inspired by the Impossible game. We can follow that up with the UFO is inspired by Flappy Bird, and so on and so forth. But if you look at all the other game modes, because you might be thinking, what about stuff like Wave and Spider and Robot? Well, that's the most interesting part. A lot of the game modes are based off existing game modes, and you can kind of follow the train of thought just by describing what the game modes do. Like, the Robot is a cube that you can hold to jump higher. The Spider is a ball that teleports rather than falls. The Wave is just a ship that instantly changes momentum rather than building up momentum. So on and so forth. Interestingly enough, the new Swingcopter game mode that's being added in 2.2 is actually also based off of, well, let's be real, the Swingcopter is based off of the glitch that people build levels with in the custom levels, but ignoring that glitch, Swingcopter also happens to be a game in which you do the exact same thing as the Swingcopter game mode in Geometry Dash, and it was made by the creator of Flappy Bird, and no one knows this thing exists. So, yeah, every game mode is based off something. NONG has mirror portals. As the name entails, NONG does have mirror portals. There are modded versions of Sub-Zero that you can find online that let you access the editor. If you do access the editor this way, you can actually go into NONG within the editor. If you turn off preview mode and scroll to this part of the level, you can actually see that the direction changes in this part are not done with 2.2 features, they are actually done with mirror portals. Meaning, in reality, this part of NONG can actually be built in the real game, you know, without the 2.2 update. This means two things. First and foremost, everyone believes that Electroman Adventures was the last level in all of the main levels to use mirror portals. That is false. Mirror portals were used in NONG. But even ignoring that, there is something else really huge about this point. Everyone in the game and in the community thinks mirror portals suck, they can never be used well, they always make the game more annoying. But NONG is a level that uses mirror portals so tactfully that people didn't even know that they were in the level. But even beyond all of that, this implies so much potential for 2.2 as an update, as you can mix changing between the direction you're moving within the level with changing what direction the level is facing, and combining those two could create something really chaotic and interesting. Symmetrical duels are not symmetrical is referring to the fact that because game modes have different physics depending on which gravity they're in, the dual game mode can really break sometimes. For the most part, symmetrical duels stay symmetrical. No issue. They're fine, right? However, if you end up in a situation where you have two slopes in the center of the screen and you hit them just right, sometimes this can misalign duels. There are also some levels that are infamously really buggy where you're supposed to be aligned but you're not, like the dual ship in Phobos. But even ignoring that, because those are usually just level design bugs, levels in which the duel is perfectly symmetrical, if you are in a game mode like Dual Wave or Dual Ship, they can desync, and it sucks. I have 2 clips to show as an example of this. What the fuck just happened? It's frustrating, because it shows up a lot more in Demons, and it can suck. And with that, we have finished Tier 7, so let us get on with Tier 8. Next up we have Anaban, which is something I don't fully remember how it went down. Anaban is considered one of the most dangerous hackers in the Geometry Dash community. Anaban wants one thing, and that's destroy Geometry Dash. Like, the whole thing. He doesn't... I don't know why. It might be out of spite or whatever. Anaban could be seen as, like, the Herobrine of Geometry Dash, except for in not a fictional story. Because a lot of the stuff Anaban has done to this game is kind of disgusting and kind of ridiculous. Like, I remember watching a video a while back where... who was it? I think it was Cyrillic. He went into the game's recent tab, and he saw that every single level was just a copy of itself. And so, like, you'd have thousands of the same level uploaded every single second, which acted as sort of a makeshift DDoS, taking down the game's servers.
Okay, if there was a level with that name, I would have given up on life. Oh my god, a hacker! Yay, I found it. I actually found a hacker who literally just uploaded 68,000 levels. Look at recent right now. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. What the fuck? Oh my god. What the fuck?
Beat one of the Anaban guy's levels. Just beat one of them.
Wait, what?
You wanna beat one of that guy's levels, the guy that's spamming the levels, just beat one.
Oh yeah, I should beat one of them. I'll beat this one. Wow, I beat it. Wow, I'm so good at GD.
There's so many coins.
Oh my god, what the hell? Thanks, Obama. I've always wanted this.
But even more annoyingly is this did two things. A, it wasted a bunch of level IDs. B, took down the game's servers. Admittedly, it was kind of funny to see the recent tab blow up like this, but no, it's not funny, because the ramifications of this and everything it caused is a big deal. Anaban has also done various other stuff like delete save data for big players' GD accounts. Temporarily, of course. Rob backs up his servers, which is good. But I think the biggest was the time where he hacked Bloodbath, which I think was the time the community realized how vulnerable Geometry Dash's servers were. Now, an interesting thing about the Bloodbath hack is Anaban actually placed his final words to the community in Bloodbath. Those words state, and I quote, "Hacking this game was fun, but this is the last time you'll hear from me. Some will be happy, others might not be. I just want to say one more thing. If you have a dream or a goal that you might have thought to be impossible at one point, don't give up on it. Achieve that goal." And then he signs. Now, what's interesting about the signature is that the signature is also credited to someone named XXOT1XX. I don't know who that is, and honestly, you can follow that rabbit hole way deeper than this, but this gives you a really good baseline idea of who Anaban is. Mental health is referring to the fact that Geometry Dash may not be good for your mental health. There are points later down the iceberg that clarify more reasons as to why, but the base level and the common theory that you hear from most people is, and you can probably relate to this sitting at home, is when you're playing Geometry Dash, there are many situations where you start to get really pissed off at a level while you're playing it, but for some reason you don't stop playing. You keep playing despite that anger. And that is awful for your mental health. If you're starting to get angry, and consider this a word of advice, if you're starting to get angry at a video game, take a break from it. Like, Not just, you know, for safety or anything like that, but for your health. Like, anger is a very bad emotion to not remedy. Next up on the iceberg, Stereo Madness is hard. This isn't a joke either. This is referring to the fact that Stereo Madness as a level is actually fairly difficult, and that the only reason it feels easy to most players is for two reasons. A, we have experience with the game, and B, we've played levels that are significantly harder. But just because one level is harder than the other doesn't mean the other is not hard. And if you throw a new player into the ring who's never played any sort of platformer or anything like that, Stereo Madness is actually a fairly difficult level. Especially comparing Stereo Madness to other rated levels on the servers that are even easier. Stereo Madness is actually difficult. Not to mention, Geometry Dash was originally considered a rage game, meaning every single level in the game is designed to piss you off. Extremes were never meant to be beaten. All extreme demons back in the early updates of the game were actually impossible levels. Extreme demons back then were considered impossible because it was extremely easy to hack verify a level and get away with it. So it's just really interesting to think about. It's especially bizarre when you consider the fact that levels that were considered impossible back in update like 1.4 are now considered medium demons. But yeah, back then extreme demons were never meant to be beaten. Adding on to that last point, a lot of Geometry Dash's top 1 extremes actually started as impossible levels. A lot of these including Arcturus, Fireworks, Slaughterhouse, and most infamously, Sockupin Circles. Sockupin Circles is interesting because this is a level all the way back in update 1.9, I believe, which was considered physically impossible, never to be beaten, completely impossible, just inconceivable. No one will ever do it, it's just physically impossible. No human can click that fast. And here, in the year 2022, someone verified it. Which adds further to the point that extreme demons were never meant to be beaten. Geometry Dash is the definition of insanity. This is referring to the fact that there is a famous joke that goes along the lines of, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That is literally Geometry Dash. Geometry Dash is a game where you attempt the same level over and over and over and over, expecting to beat it. So, you could argue Geometry Dash is the definition of insanity. I'd like to give a quick eye strain warning for the next point on the iceberg. Battle of the Shades is a demon made around Update 2.0 that really did not age too well in regards to quality, and because of this, the creator of the level got a fuck ton of hate because the level wasn't good and they really wanted it unrated. This was back when people didn't understand that you can't delete rated levels even if you created it. So, what essentially happened is, due to all the hate this creator got because of how bad the level was, they actually updated Battle of the Shades to be a level that is physically impossible. This level was covered in text that said, "Stop the hate," it was decorated to be really, really edgy, and it used Omega Flowey's boss fight theme from Undertale. Shockingly, and I will not understand this to this day, the level still didn't get unrated. So the creator updated it again to be an undecorated, impossible level layout. That obviously created more hate, to which the level still, by some fucking means, did not get unrated. To which finally the creator just said fuck it and updated it to be a level with nothing in it aside from text, making it an auto level. You know, you just play it and you beat it, and the text said something along the lines of, like, "I'm sorry," or whatever. It was just apologizing. This finally prompted RobTop to unrate the level. If you go into the level now, the level is actually an impossible layout, but all the objects are invisible, to which there is text if you make it all the way through that says, "Something is coming." I went to grab footage of the, like, "Something is coming" level, and then when I opened Battle of the Shades, it got updated again and now it's just advertising a YouTube channel, and I'm not going to show it because I haven't checked the YouTube channel and I kind of don't want to, but for all I know it could be really fucked up. I'm not going to bother doing that. But yeah, no, even after the unrate, it's still constantly being updated. So yeah, Battle of the Shades, probably the edgiest reaction to hate I've ever seen. I will say though, the level definitely didn't deserve the hate, and I definitely feel bad for GD Virus on this one. Next up, we have the duplicate upload incident, which is probably more relevant right now than any other point. The duplicate upload incident was a massive event that no one seems to remember. In fact, I could only find one Reddit post talking about it, but essentially what happened was, en masse, Geometry Dash YouTubers started having their videos striked, and their channels demonetized. The reason for this is because YouTube thought that every single video completion of a level was the same. Basically, YouTube couldn't tell the difference between Riot beating Bloodbath and Nobleboy beating Bloodbath. Due to this, lots of creators got their videos taken down, some creators had their channels banned. On top of this, a lot of creators actually privated their channels out of fear of any of this happening. Probably the highest profile example was Nexus GD. Nexus GD privated his entire channel, along with many other creators, out of fear that their videos would be taken down. And this was a terrifying moment to be in the Geometry Dash community, because if you uploaded Geometry Dash completions, would your video be deleted? Who knows? As much as it seems like this event ended because, well, nobody's talking about it, it's actually still ongoing to this day. As of recording this, it is February 13th, 2022. YouTuber FNM04 had their entire channel demonetized, so this is still happening to this day, because of course, YouTube thought FNM04's videos were all reused content, which they were not. Because of this, being a Geometry Dash YouTuber is actually potentially dangerous unless, you know, you're a commentator like Eric Van Wilderman or Aeon Air. Mainly because you never know if this will happen to you. Now, if you're doing it out of passion and you don't monetize your channel, I think you're fine. But this is extremely dangerous for people who put a lot of effort into completing levels and rely on monetization. As FNM04 states in their video,
I rely on my income from YouTube to help me with school, meals, and keeping my equipment in good condition to record the best quality videos possible. I really hope this misunderstanding can be sorted out as quickly as possible.
So with that, we have finished Tier 8. So let us move on to Tier 9. Next up is Subliminal Messages. Now, this may sound like some conspiracy theory wacko stuff, but it's actually much more simple than that. Geometry Dash has a lot of levels in which text flashes so fast you can't read it. Examples of this are levels like Killbot, 666, where, yeah, there's just subliminal messages within the game. Now, whether or not these subliminal messages are harmful, that's up for debate. Probably not, because most people know what it's saying even if they can't read it. But it's still really interesting that subliminal messages can exist in this game at all. So as a quick warning before we continue deeper into the iceberg, 4 of the points from here on out are a bit triggering and include topics of self-harm, suicide, and just overall triggering topics in that branch. I'm going to soften the blow as I describe these a little bit so that it won't be that painful to listen to, but if you're triggered by these topics in general, I will put a trigger warning before I start talking about the point. Alright, so this is going to be the first of 4 points with a major trigger warning. This one is a trigger warning for self-harm. Slaughterhouse is a top one that recently got verified and rated. It uses a NONG song called Lost by Crimes. Now, the thing about this song, and the reason this is so low on the iceberg, is because there is a music video for the song, and the song's music video contains footage of a girl self-harming. Now, I am shocked that this is allowed on YouTube, if I'm being totally honest, But even ignoring that, the reason this is such a big deal and why I'm calling this out on the iceberg is because it's become sort of a challenge in the GD community, sort of like Meat Spin or Two Girls, One Cup. And the challenge is quite literally just tell someone who doesn't know about the music video to watch the music video without giving them a trigger warning. Like, yo, I dare you to go and watch the music video for Lost by Crimes. And then they see a girl self-harm. The music video is obviously not for the faint of heart, and this is definitely a douchey thing to do to someone. And yeah, so that's a thing. Next up is ID number 1. This could be referring to 2 different points, but I'll tell you which one it's actually referring to. But the other one, just if you're curious, is that song ID number 1 in Geometry Dash actually exists, and it's a song called Chilled 1, and it's just a really, really short, like, 7-second clip. However, what this point on the iceberg is actually referring to is level ID 1, which doesn't exist. Much like ID number 666, it's kind of a mystery. No one really knows what the level is, and if you search any variation of level ID number 1 or Geometry Dash level ID 1 or anything like that, nothing comes up. What does the first Geometry Dash level ever made in the editor look like? Next up is brainwashing theory. Brainwashing theory is a theory that popped up in different forum threads, especially the GD forums, that you could hypothetically use a Geometry Dash level to brainwash the player. And this isn't entirely far-fetched if you think about it, considering as we've established, stuff like Subliminal Messages are possible to create in the game, on top of the fact that you can create full-on animation in the game. So, who's to say you couldn't create a level designed to brainwash the player? This conspiracy theory, if you follow down the rabbit hole, turns into a total Polybius-related conspiracy theory, saying that RobTop was actually hired by the Swedish government, and that, you know, the game is made to addict and make players submissive so that they listen to people more. Obviously, it's a conspiracy theory. It's not necessarily true, but it's a really interesting conspiracy theory nonetheless, because it makes you question what's actually possible in the editor. Geometry Dash is satanic is another conspiracy theory, like the last point, but this one is actually believed more, and it's kind of shocking the amount of people that believe this. Basically, the logic goes like this. It can, and by the way, I will say it can stem from brainwashing theory, because it can be an alternate motive as to why the game would brainwash the player, but ignoring that, because that's only, you know, a thing they would do, it just supplies motive for brainwashing theory, nothing more. The theory behind this is that Geometry Dash's most common type of level is hell levels, levels that are designed to be, well, hellish in nature, to the point where some of the most popular levels are 9 Circles, Bloodbath, Bloodlust, Yatagarasu, levels that are clearly designed to be extremely satanic in nature. Now, most people would say this is just an aesthetic, and let's be real, it's just an aesthetic. What these conspiracy theorists basically say is that the reason these levels are all hell-themed is that Geometry Dash is trying to indoctrinate players into believing all this satanic stuff, and believing that, you know, satanic stuff is cool and hip and awesome. This conspiracy theory, if you follow down the rabbit hole enough, people straight up believe that RobTop is the devil, which, I'm sorry, that mental image is so funny to me. I could just imagine Satan sitting down at a little computer in Sweden, typing up code about a cube jumping over spikes. But yeah, that's the conspiracy, that Geometry Dash is actually a very satanic game. And now we have the Tony the Tiger incident, and oh boy, where do I begin with this one? So there is a Geometry Dash level called Your Brain on Drugs, and this level is basically one of the most high-effort shitposts I've ever seen in the game, aside of maybe a preheat to 425. This level is, like, a really high-effort shitpost, because it makes fun of a lot of different levels, like, I don't remember what it was called, but it was an impossible quiz-themed level. It also makes fun of boss fight levels, Basically, to describe the absurdity of the level, there's a boss fight against a red circle that shoots at you with a cock gun. It is a gun that also doubles as being the circle's cock. No, I'm not joking. It's such a weird level. And the level still exists to this day. It was rated, and it still is rated, but the Tony the Tiger incident is referring to a specific joke in the level that people, I guess, considered to be going too far, which I can see, and I'll explain. Basically, if you died in a very specific part of the level, I think it's if you died, I don't fully remember, I haven't been able to get footage of it, but I'm pretty sure it was if you died in a very specific place, you would see an image of Tony the Tiger, and it said something along the lines of, like, join this Discord server for a great time, or something like that. I don't fully remember the text, and it showed a Discord link. If you proceeded to join that Discord, it would be a Discord server where random people in the Geometry Dash community, as a joke, were sharing around images of Tony the Tiger pornography and worshipping Tony the Tiger as if he was their god. This all climaxed when eventually someone on Twitter made a call-out post saying, "Isn't it a little bit fucked up to have a level linking to a porn server in a kids game?" To which a lot of people agreed. The creator of the level got a bunch of hate for this, the level got unrated. I'd like to also point out, just to be fully transparent, there's also an extremely large amount of people that say the server didn't actually contain pornography, and that it was just a joke worship server. Like, it was all just memes. But I don't necessarily know if NSFW was actually shared or not. I'm really not sure. This is totally out of my hands at this point. This is just what the drama was about. So then what the creator of the level did is he removed the link, and now if you die in that spot, it says, naughty Discord servers are not great. And that's it. Now the level got re-rated, and everything is fine. Most of it has faded from recent memory. The significance, though, is that a lot of people can't let the joke go. And so, there are a lot of people in the GD community, to this day, who worship Tony the Tiger like he's their god. Yeah, I'm not joking. Moving on. Next up we have rage videos, and it's gonna seem very weird that this is at the bottom of the list, but trust me, there's a reason. Rage videos, as you don't know, is infamously a thing where people play a video game, in this case Geometry Dash, and in the recording they get so pissed off that they start screaming and all this stuff, right? I think the biggest example of this is probably the video of that one guy trying to beat Rupture. Oh my god! But ignoring that video, it's overall a pretty common thing, or at least it used to be. Rage videos aren't as common anymore, but it was a pretty common thing. The reason it's so low down on the iceberg is for the specific reason of a lot of the people in those rage videos, those videos go viral, and that's all they're known for, is just getting pissed off at Geometry Dash, and they get made fun of. And because of that, a lot of people have actually had very bad mental health problems crop up, because every time they see themselves on the internet, they're just being made fun of. I think a lot of people kind of stopped being tone deaf to this after the whole NONG incident, which isn't on this iceberg. But the NONG incident is when NONG beat Kinos, he had a really, really extreme reaction. Granted, it wasn't a rage reaction, it was more out of excitement that he finally beat the level, but same idea. And when people started making memes of NONG's reaction, it eventually got to the point where PewDiePie made a video on the meme and called him the it was the Impossible Game speedrunner. And after all of this, it eventually climaxed to the point where NONG made a video coming out with and admitting the fact that this was all affecting his mental health to the point where he didn't even want to play the game anymore. So people started to back off, stop making memes, and all was well. But this is probably the highest profile example of it, and this is probably the only time where people making memes kind of backed off a little bit. But there are many other examples of people becoming a meme through their reaction to beating and or dying in Geometry Dash, and that meme severely affecting their mental health. So next up we have team hacks, and I am not qualified to talk about this point. I know nothing of the situation, but if you want a more in-depth and more accurate look at the situation, I will be linking a documentary from a YouTuber named Stormy. But essentially, what the Team Hack situation was, is there was a group of modders and hackers, they called themselves Team Hacks, they contained many notable modders and hackers in the community, and essentially what happened was, these guys were developing the kind of mods you'd see in Megahack V6 and V7. The thing is, one day Team Hacks decided they were going to try to push the servers to their limit, and to basically try to find exploits that could damage the servers. They weren't going to use them maliciously, they were just going to report them to RobTop so that he could fix them. The problem is, eventually some of these exploits, and I'm not entirely sure what happened here, but I think they got either leaked or some of the people in the group went rogue, something along those lines. But a couple people started using these exploits in very malicious ways. Again, I don't understand the situation fully, but, what I understand, the shit that happened due to the Team Hacks situation is levels that weren't released yet got leaked, the servers went down pretty often, lots of people had their save data deleted, and probably the one that affects people the most today, and this is something you can very much see, if a level was made by a creator who hadn't actually registered their account, meaning their name would have been green, that name no longer exists in the game. It just shows up as unknown creator, or dash. What this essentially means is that there are thousands of creators that just had their accounts wiped. The levels that still exist to this day, but the creators' accounts are just gone. The biggest example is Jax, whose account I think is back now, but for the longest time didn't exist anymore. You guys remember Animan from the last tier? Well, a lot of what Animan did, they got those exploits from the Team Hack situation. So, just puts it into perspective. The editor is a quantum computer. Oh boy, where do I begin with this one? So, for those of you who don't understand quantum mechanics and computing, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert on the subject, effectively how quantum computing works is a computer that is capable of quantum computing would be able to not only determine two possible endings to a solution, but every single possibility in between. A best way to explain this is the whole cat in the box thing of, like, if there's a cat in a box and you don't know whether it's dead or not, the cat would be both dead and alive until you observe it, in which observing it determines whether or not it is dead or alive. Sort of like a space in between spaces. Quantum computers would be able to process all of those possibilities at once. So what does this have to do with the Geometry Dash editor? Well, it's all theoretical, and it hasn't been done before, but many people have theorized, and this is just a theory, from like GD forums and stuff, but many people have theorized that if you set two conflicting triggers up just right, theoretically the editor could function as a quantum computer. Most of the theories around this specifically mention the random trigger that's coming in update 2.2. If you have two conflicting random triggers, right, where it's like a 50% chance the block will move up and a 50% chance that the block will move down, one of the two things could happen, but you don't know which. Theoretically, having two different random triggers do the same thing could be considered a quantum function. The best way to explain why that's the case is explaining a qubit. So, in binary, which is the base of all PC-based coding, you have a 0 and a 1. The best way to picture what a 0 and a 1 represents is picture a light switch. A 0 is the off setting, and a 1 is the on setting. You flip the switch, it does different things. Now, picture 5 light switches. Different combinations do different things. Like, flipping every switch up turns the light on. Flipping every switch down turns the light off. That is the basic idea of how binary works. So with binary in mind, quantum computing uses what's called a qubit. Now, a lot of people represent a qubit with the number 2, but I don't know if that's necessarily what it actually would be, but for the sake of explanation, let's say we add a 2 into binary, so now it's 0, 1, and 2. What would the 2 represent? Well, back to the light switch, picture you're holding the light switch in the very center, in between on and off. Depending on how you hold it, you don't necessarily know whether it being dead center is going to flip the switch on or off. But the computer knows both the possibilities are possible. So when observed, that qubit can output one of the 2 possibilities at random. This can allow processing speeds to skyrocket, and this is basically how a qubit works. Mind you, again, everything I just explained is very complex stuff, and I recommend do your own research because I'm not an expert. But what people are essentially saying is that setting a random trigger to do one thing and then having another random trigger conflict and do another thing, theoretically that could be a makeshift qubit. It's not truly quantum computing. I guess the best way to describe it is it's sort of fake quantum computing. But yeah, no, it's a really interesting concept because people are saying that the editor could theoretically be a quantum computer. It also wraps the other way around by saying that maybe the editor would work differently on a quantum computer. Basically, if you place 2 random triggers, they conflict, they might do nothing, they might do something, who knows. But on a quantum computer, theoretically, every function could happen at once, which is a real mindfuck to think about. Electrodynamics negative emotional aura. If you've ever seen the Super Mario 64 iceberg, you know exactly what I'm about to talk about. But for a brief recap, because I'm going to use that iceberg as a quick rundown and an example, people who have played the level Wet Dry World in Super Mario 64, upon playing the level, feel a plethora of negative emotions. Usually these emotions range from demotivation to the point where they don't want to play 64 anymore, to them feeling straight up depressed and, you know, bedridden the rest of the day. Like, this level makes people feel really ill sometimes, and it's not really known why. It's not like some creepypasta shit, like people aren't, you know, it's not like Lavender Town Syndrome where people start, you know, doing the not alive dance whenever they hear it. It's more just a case of people really, really dislike playing this level, and they can't even explain why. It just makes them feel sick in ways that are hard to describe. The most common thing people say about the way they feel, like the most common, is that they feel uneasy and uncomfortable, like they're not supposed to be here. Like, very much discomfort. So why am I talking about a point from the Super Mario 64 iceberg in a Geometry Dash iceberg video? Well, it's because this point pretty much coattails off that. Electrodynamics negative emotional aura is referring to the idea that, much like that level in Super Mario 64, electrodynamics itself also has a negative emotional aura. Lots of people feel a lot of different emotions when playing this, and it's not just anger, because I know people are going to say, well, it's the hardest main level, not counting Deadlocked, of course. But, like, it's not just that, because people who can beat the level easily even say that they hate this level and that it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I myself am one of these people. Whenever I even come close to this level, like when I see it scrolling through the levels list, I instantly get a sense of unease, and I really don't know why. But this is a really common thing amongst the community, where electrodynamics just makes people feel negative emotions for seemingly no reason. And with that, we have finished Tier 9. Let's move on to the final tier, Tier 10. Trigger warning for suicide, murder, and unspoken crimes. And I say that because I'm not name-dropping these crimes. So snuff levels is referring to a concept within Geometry Dash that is terrifying, disgusting, and that I don't like. But I'm putting it down here because it is a real, kind of important thing. Basically, as we've established further up on the iceberg, it is possible to create pornography within the level editor, and a lot of these levels are even used to troll streamers. You can create animation, you can create subliminal messages, you can do a plethora of stuff. You can use custom songs in the levels, so on and so forth. A lot of these things open up the possibility of people dropping really, really fucked up things in the levels and then uploading them, effectively creating a snuff Geometry Dash level. To really give you an idea of why this is so dangerous and how terrifying of a concept this is, imagine you're just playing in the Recent tab one day, and you open a level, and you see a guy's decapitated corpse on the side of the fucking road. It's definitely not a fun concept, but it's a real risk, and it fades directly into our next topic. Okay, so the next topic I'm going to treat as delicately and as seriously as possible. Trigger warning for suicide, and if the developer sees this, this is a reason for you to include more possibilities for reporting levels. But essentially what happens is, sometimes if you go into the Recent tab, you can find levels people post where it's literally just text scrolling by, and that text is somebody's suicide note. This is a really dark and depressing thing that can happen, and it's just overall really depressing. The idea that someone took their own life, and the last thing they ever left on the planet was a Geometry Dash level. It's really depressing. This is probably the darkest point on the iceberg. Well, that point was pretty dark. How about we rebound with Geometry Dash causes insanity? Now, I'm not talking about the stereotypical creepypasta form of insanity where you'll suddenly become a serial killer. No. This isn't glorifying insanity. What this is referring to is the idea that if played enough, Geometry Dash can actually, and this has been talked about by people other than me, Geometry Dash actually is capable of driving players to madness. What kind of madness, it really depends, but this is basically the mental health point times 20. Stemming from the Subliminal Messages point on the iceberg, this could theoretically be caused by that, but there are many things within the game that people believe could actually drive people to a point of insanity. Which, yeah, I could see it. Leaderboards are full of cheaters is saying just that. The in-game leaderboards are full of cheaters. It is insanely easy to cheat in this game. Like, absurdly easy. So, half the players we think are legit could actually be cheaters, to the extent where who's to say that, like, every single fucking player from position 20 all the way to 50 isn't, like, nothing but cheaters. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, I'm just saying there's no way of truly knowing if someone's a hacker or not anymore. Next up, we have every level is possible. Stemming off of the point that extremes weren't meant to be beaten, and that, you know, Suck Oop in Circles was fucking verified, this point on the iceberg refers to the fact that every level is theoretically possible. You know, with the exception of ones that aren't, like Suck Oop and Wall. But this is basically saying that any level that has any sort of open space from the beginning to the end could theoretically be beaten. So, like, today we're seeing levels like Suck Oop in Circles and Slaughterhouse be beaten, which could have never been beaten in 1.9. On top of the fact that Bloodbath is now considered an easier extreme, when in 1.9 Bloodbath was the fucking top one. What this essentially means is that we don't know the game's true skill ceiling, so for right now, for all we know, Suck Oop in Circles is the hardest level to be beaten, but maybe one day Suck Oop in Circles will be like number 50 on the Demons list, and Silent Circles Unnerfed will be top 1. We don't fucking know what's possible and not possible anymore. So, this point is basically just saying that any level people consider impossible could be verified, like, several years from now. Who knows? And if you think that's a far-fetched thing to say, will go back in time with a time machine. I know that's not possible, but just follow my train of thought here. Go back in time with a time machine and show a 1.9 player footage of someone verifying suck open circles. They'll immediately accuse it of being a hacker. Next up, we have GD can kill you. This is referring to the fact that Geometry Dash, in theory, could actually kill you. There are many, many ways the game could kill you. A couple obvious examples are stress. You know, the idea that someone plays a level that's really difficult, and their heart rate goes up so high that they have a heart attack. And it's already alarming that there's footage of people with heart rate monitors running while they stream the game, having their heart rate go up to, like,
over 300.
Even beyond that, it's just the idea of maybe the game could cause so much stress that it could actually cause a heart attack. Because let's be real, some of the reactions people have to beating certain levels is kind of scary at times.
I verified suck open circles! What?! I just verified suck open circles! I just verified it! I just verified it! I just verified suck open circles! I just verified suck open circles!
And the idea that someone will be playing a level, finally beat it, and then drop dead due to their heart rate going so high, it's kind of terrifying, you know? Ignoring that, there are the more theoretical and even downright conspiratorial ways it could cause death. I think the other most likely way is seizures, and this is something I've always actually been worried about a little bit. Like, what if the game's flashing lights actually killed someone? Because let's be real, this game has some intense flashing lights at some points. But there are many ways in which this game could kill a player, so yeah, Geometry Dash could actually kill the player. Next up, we have Megahack RCE, or Megahack Remote Code Execution. This is referring to a possible exploit within Megahack, in which Megahack V7 and possibly V6, I don't know, I've only used V7. Megahack V7 has a feature in which you can go into the game's resources folder and there will be an extensions folder. You can drop DLLs into this folder and it will essentially add mods to Megahack. It's, as the name entails, an extension to Megahack. The problem is, this, along with Megahack having a DLL injector, opens up a huge potential security vulnerability in which, if someone wanted to, they could develop a malicious script that runs alongside Megahack, and this script could do, you know, anything from hack into the user's Geometry Dash account all the way to harm the user's computer in and of itself. If you want to go far enough down this line, it could easily lead to a remote code execution exploit, in which whatever is injected into Megahack can allow the hacker to remotely execute code on the victim's computer. It's a really terrifying concept, and not an unrealistic one either. Okay, it's time for the final point on the iceberg. And this is, every verification is hacked. Now, this point isn't necessarily saying that there are no levels that were beaten legitimately, as there are. There are legit verifications. What this point on the iceberg is saying is that because the game is so unpredictable, and because hacking methods have gotten so advanced that they're almost undetectable, for all we know, any of the big verifications could be hacked. Any of the big verifiers could be hackers, and we would just never know. A lot of the times, with hacking scandals as of recently, a lot of them, we didn't know until the hacker admitted to it themselves. Mix that with the absurdity of the levels that are being verified today, actual impossible levels from 1.9, like sock open circles, like, it is batshit insane, the levels that are being verified today. So what if those levels actually are not being verified and they're completely hacked? I want to stop right here, by the way, to say that, remember, this is just a conspiracy theory on an iceberg video. I don't want, like, anyone getting harassed because of a fucking conspiracy theory, but it's an interesting train of thought because, like, as much as we could probably take certain verifications and be like, yeah, okay, that's obviously not hacked, right? If a verification comes out of nowhere, you know, or like there isn't a lot of proof or whatever, it could very well be hacked. Any verification, and I want to add this point too, it's become acceptable now to heavily edit verification videos, and what I mean by that is GD YouTubers, whenever they verify a level, will remove the audio from the entire verification and just edit in the song manually, and then have that fade out and go to the real verification audio at the very end. So, you're not actually hearing the level's music, you're just hearing the music edited in. To the point where a lot of them even have an effect where the music will start before the attempt. It's all very strange, and it just leads to this kind of dilemma where, how do we trust people in this community? We will literally never know if some verifications are legit or not. Furthermore, this could bleed into the point from earlier about the leaderboards being filled with hackers. If that's the case, then who's to say verifications aren't the same thing? It's just a really scary mindset because, like, a good example is turn back way earlier in the iceberg to the point about Riot and Cyclic's rivalry. Most of that time, Cyclic was hacking and nobody knew. Who's to say that there aren't more Cyclics out there? Maybe Riot's still the top one, although I doubt that. I'm just saying, like, it's a really, really scary thing to think about. And with that, we have finished the Geometry Dash iceberg. I'm not gonna lie, kind of emotional at the end of this video. Because, I've been working on this for quite a while, not counting the time of actually typing up the points on the iceberg and making the iceberg. If you count that, it's been since before my birthday, but, so like in the middle of 2021. But editing this video alone has taken so long that, we'll put this into perspective. When I started, Tartarus was the top one. So, yeah. I just want to say, if you watched this far into the video, thank you. This has been a total passion project, and it's been really, really fun. I'm hoping to get this video out before 2.2, and I've been hearing talks that 2.2 might be coming out in, like, June or July. The main basis of this being that, you know, the World Gauntlet is happening in June, or at least the World Gauntlet's contest is ending in June, and people are saying, well, it makes sense if the update came out when the Gauntlet contest was over. Mix that with the fact RobTop said the update is coming this year, it's very likely. So, if that happens, then, well, that's a great deadline for me, actually, because that means I got this video done 4 months earlier than I needed to. So, for anyone watching this video who came from my regular completion videos, if you want to see more long, in-depth content like this, it may not be about Geometry Dash, but I have a review channel, and there isn't a lot on it right now, and a lot of it is pretty shit because it was before I got Sony Vegas, and it was before my editing started to improve. But I already have a video in the works where I review every single song Skrillex released. With exceptions, of course, you know. Well, you'll see when you watch the video. It'll make sense, but point is, I'm making a video where I review every single Skrillex song, and that video is actually kind of close to being done recording, and once I'm done recording it, I can start editing that. So if you want to see more videos sort of in this vein of just long, you know, videos, go check out my review channel, maybe look at some of the content that's up on there so far. And yeah, I guess as a final thing to say, another thing that's changed over the extremely long period of time it took to make this video is, I made a Patreon. I think I edited in an advertisement for my Patreon at the beginning. I already know I had to edit that in sort of at the last minute. But I want to talk about it here, not to shill it and not to say, oh, you can, you know, throw me $1 if you want to. Although, you can throw me $1 if you want to, but you don't have to. No, the reason I bring up my Patreon is because not only did I make a Patreon while I was editing this, but within a day I got my first Patreon sub. I think it's called a patron. I'm new to Patreon, I apologize, but I wanted to say thank you to Gaki for subbing to my Patreon. I appreciate it. It means the world to me because I didn't expect anyone to even touch this thing. I'm not gonna lie, it was just a thing I wanted to have as an option, so I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I don't really have much more to say. This has been the Geometry Dash Iceberg, and I hope you enjoyed.